Chapter 1638. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was still sparring with the assassin. At first, he was still being suppressed. But gradually, the two were evenly matched. Of course, this was because the assassin had suppressed his realm. Otherwise, with his current strength, he wouldn't be able to fight against a transcendent realm expert. On the side, Yi Nan looked at Yi Xian in the distance. "What do you think?" Dao Yi smiled. "Not bad. Not bad." Yi Nan looked at Dao Yi with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She knew that Dao Yi had very high standards. Ordinary people couldn't even enter her eyes. Even Xiao Mu was only average in her eyes. Yi Nan turned to look at Yi Xian. She couldn't help but admit that Yi Xian was indeed capable. One must know that this assassin was personally trained by Dao Yi. In terms of assassination, he was only second to Xiao Mu. Dao Yi suddenly said in a soft voice, "He can be even more outstanding." Yi Nan looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi smiled. If a person pushes himself to the limit, there will be unexpected gains. But, let's not force him for now. Yi Nan said in a soft voice, "Do you really want him to bear all of this?" Dao Yi said in a soft voice, "The other dimensional people won't let him go." Yi Nan said in a deep voice, "Did Master win or lose back then?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian in the distance. After a long silence, her eyes suddenly became misty. "What do you think?" Yi Nan didn't say anything. At this time, Dao Yi turned around and left. Yi Nan asked, "Where are you going?" Dao Yi smiled. "To make some arrangements." Saying so, she disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. In the distance, Yi Xian was still madly training. Just like that, 1 month passed in the blink of an eye. In the starry sky, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He turned around and stabbed with his sword. With this stab, a figure was forced to stop. It was the assassin. But the next moment, the assassin mysteriously disappeared. Yi Xian's expression was calm as he took a step back. Just as he took a step back, a dagger brushed past his forehead. The moment his feet touched the ground, Yi Xian twisted his wrist and slashed horizontally with his sword. Chi! The space in front of him was torn apart, and a figure retreated. It was the assassin. At this moment, he could already deal with the assassin with ease. Yi Xian was about to attack when Dao Yi suddenly said, "That's enough." Yi Xian turned around and looked at Dao Yi. Dao Yi smiled and said, "Let's call it a day." Yi Xian was puzzled. "Why?" Dao Yi said with smile, "Today is a special day. I will take you to do some special things. Follow me." With that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian bowed slightly to the killer, "Thank you." After that, he turned around and followed Dao Yi. In the starry sky, Yi Xian was walking slowly with Dao Yi. Yi Xian asked, "Where are we going?" Dao Yi smiled and said, "I'll let you be happy today." "Be happy?" Yi Xian was stunned. At this moment, the starry sky around Dao Yi and Yi Xian suddenly rippled like water. Gradually, the two disappeared into the starry sky. After a while, Yi Xian and Dao Yi appeared on a street. Looking at the street in front of him, Yi Xian was stunned. It's somewhat familiar. And also somewhat unfamiliar. Where is this? While Yi Xian was puzzled, Dao Yi suddenly smiled and said, "You'll know soon." As soon as she finished speaking, she and Yi Xian disappeared without a trace. When they appeared again, they were in a large hall. A woman stood at the entrance of the hall. She wore a dragon robe and had her hands behind her back, and she held a wooden figure in her right hand. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw this woman. He naturally knew this woman. It was Tuoba Yen. Tuoba Yen looked at the distant sky, and after a long time of silence, she looked at the wooden figure in her hand. As she looked at it, she shook her head and smiled, "I wonder if you still remember me." "Of course I do." A voice suddenly resounded from within the hall. Tuoba Yan's body trembled slightly, and she turned around slowly. When she saw Yi Xian, she was first stunned, and then tears flowed from her eyes. Yi Xian walked over to Tuoba Yen, and Tuoba Yen smiled and said, "Are you dreaming?" Yi Xian shook his head, "No." As he spoke, he took Tuoba Yan's hand with both hands. Tuoba Yen lowered her head slightly and said softly, "Why are you back?" Yi Xian hugged Tuoba Yen lightly, "Sorry for making you wait so long." Tuoba Yen leaned her head lightly on Yi Xian's shoulder. "I thought you would never come back." Yi Xian hugged Tuoba Yen tightly, "It's my fault." Tuoba Yen hugged Yi Xian's waist with both hands, and said with a trembling voice, "You left without a sound, and when you came without a sound. You're really heartless." Yi Xian hugged Tuoba Yen tightly, and did not speak for a long time. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian pulled Tuoba Yen to the entrance of the hall, and the two sat there. Tuoba Yen leaned on Yi Xian's shoulder, while Yi Xian told Tuoba Yen about his experiences over the years. Very quiet. Very warm. As for Dao Yi, he was nowhere to be found. After a long time, as if recalling something, Yi Xian suddenly pulled Tuoba Yen up and said, "Let's go to Canglan Academy." With that, he pulled Tuoba Yen and disappeared on the spot. With his current strength, it was too easy for him to get to Canglan Academy. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian arrived at Canglan Academy. At that moment, Canglan Academy was crowded with people, and it was very lively. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Tuoba Yen pulled Yi Xian's hand, and said with a smile, "Today is Canglan Academy's recruitment day." Yi Xian blinked. Canglan Academy's recruitment day? Tuoba Yen nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, "Who's the dean now?" Tuoba Yen was about to speak when a man beside him suddenly laughed. "You don't even know who the dean is?" Yi Xian looked at the man, and the man said with a smile, "Brother, did you fall from the sky? You don't even know who Canglan Academy's dean is." Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. "Please enlighten me, brother." The man sized up Yi Xian, and said with a smile, "The dean of Canglan Academy is naturally Yi Xian, Dean Yi." Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned, then looked at Tuoba Yen beside him. Tuoba Yen said with a smile, "It's always been you." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian looked at the huge stone platform in the distance, where many people were queuing up to take the test. Tuoba Yen said, "Only those who reach the Qi-controlling realm are qualified to enter the next round of the test." Qi-controlling realm. Yi Xian said softly, "The requirements are even higher." Tuoba Yen said with a smile, "That's right. Canglan Academy is now the strongest academy in Azure Province." Yi Xian said with a smile, "Wait for me." With that said, he walked over. "Line up to take the test." It wasn't long before it was Yi Xian's turn. Yi Xian walked over to the measurement stone. Meanwhile, an elder suddenly said, "There are 6 energy stones on the stone pillar. Pour your energy into them, and you'll pass the test if you're able to light up one." Yi Xian asked, "What if I light up 6? The elder stroked his beard and smiled, "No one has ever been able to light up 6. If you're able to light up 6, then you'll be the most monstrous genius in the history of our Canglan Academy. But that's clearly impossible." Yi Xian suddenly placed his right hand on the measurement stone. In the next moment, all 6 energy stones on the measurement stone lit up. The elder's smile froze when he witnessed this scene. Countless people in the surroundings looked over in succession, and they were instantly flabbergasted when they saw the 6 energy stones that had lit up. The elder touched the energy stone and said softly, "It wouldn't be broken, right?" As he spoke, he turned around to look at a young man. "Bring a new measurement stone up right now." The young man hurriedly turned around and left. The elder sized up Yi Xian, and then he said, "Young man, what's your name?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Yang Xian." Yang Xian. The elder sized up Yi Xian again, and then he asked, "Who's your master?" Yi Xian smiled, "Tianming." The elder frowned slightly, "Tianming?" Yi Xian nodded. The elder pondered deeply for a moment before he said, Tianming. As he spoke, he hesitated for a moment before he said, I know. So you're Tianming's brilliant disciple. I even drank with your master. Yi Xian was speechless. Meanwhile, the young man from before returned with another measurement stone. The elder held Yi Xian's hand and said with a smile, My dear nephew. I believe you. After all, you're Tianming's brilliant disciple. Based on my relationship with your master, I would still believe you even if the entire world suspects you of cheating. However, for the sake of shutting the mouths of the world, you should test it again. Yi Xian was speechless. This damnable geezer is really bad. Like hell I'd believe you. Yi Xian placed his hand on the measurement stone, and it wasn't long before the 6 energy stones lit up once more. An uproar arose in the surroundings when they witnessed this scene. No one in Navy Tide Academy had ever been able to light up 6 energy stones at once. Today, someone had actually lit up 6 energy stones. The elder who stood by Yi Xian's side spoke with a trembling voice, Nephew. Let's go. From now onward, you're an inner court disciple of my Navy Tide Academy. As he spoke, he pulled Yi Xian along and ran up the mountain. All along the way, the old man said excitedly, Nephew. The old man guarantees that once you join our Navy Tide Academy, you'll be the next dean in less than 10 years. Yi Xian blinked, what about Dean Yi? The old man roared with laughter, Dean Yi might have already perished. Yi Xian's face darkened. Motherfucker. In next to no time, the old man pulled Yi Xian along as he arrived before Navy Tide Hall. The old man was just about to enter when a middle-aged man obstructed the old man's path. The vice dean is teaching. Don't disturb him. The old man said furiously, the old man has something to report. As he spoke, he pushed the middle-aged man aside, and then he pulled Yi Xian along as he entered the hall. As soon as he entered the hall, Yi Xian saw a familiar figure. Old Mo. Mo Yinshi. At this moment, Mo Yinshi was holding an ancient book and explaining it, and over 10 people sat before him. There were both men and women amongst them. Mo Yinshi was stunned on the spot when he saw Yi Xian. The old man was just about to speak when Mo Yinshi suddenly charged over to Yi Xian and smashed a heavy punch on Yi Xian's chest, and then he roared with laughter. Bandit Yi, you've actually returned. Ha! Bandit Yi. Everyone here was stunned when they saw Mo Yinshi act in this way. As he gazed at Mo Yinshi who'd matured quite a bit, Yi Xian said in a light voice, Old Mo. Mo Yinshi roared with laughter. I thought you'd never return. Meanwhile, the elder spoke with a trembling voice, Vice Dean. This is. Mo Yinshi smiled, he's Yi Xian, our Dean Yi. Ha! The elder's eyes rolled up as he fell to the ground. We're finished. Meanwhile, a man suddenly charged into the hall. He was stunned when he saw Yi Xian, and then he charged forward and hugged Yi Xian. Bandit Yi. It was Bai Zai. Bai Zai let go of Yi Xian, and then he punched Yi Xian's chest while his eyes were slightly red. I thought you'd forgotten all of us. Yi Xian smiled, of course not. Meanwhile, a woman suddenly walked in from outside, and she was holding a drumstick in her hand. Jianghu. Jianghu fell silent for a moment when he saw Yi Xian, and then he said, I'll leave dinner to you. Yi Xian roared with laughter, all right. No problem. At night. Yi Xian was cooking in the academy's cafeteria while Jianghu stood on guard and stole some food from time to time. Mo Yinshi was in charge of washing the vegetables. Bai Zai was in charge of chopping the firewood. Tuoba Yen watched silently from the side. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from outside, you don't mind adding a pair of chopsticks, right? Yi Xian turned around and saw a woman standing outside the hall. Jianghu. Moreover, she wore a set of clean white armor. Yi Xian smiled, of course not. Jianghu walked over to Yi Xian, take a look at my saber. Yi Xian immediately withdrew the silver saber. Jianghu looked at the silver saber for a long time, then he smiled and said, I forgive you. Yi Xian said softly, thank you. At this moment, another voice resounded from outside the hall, how can I be missing? A familiar voice. Yi Xian turned around and saw a man. Mo Xia. Mo Xia looked at Yi Xian, Brother Yi, long time no see. Yi Xian smiled slightly, Brother Mo, long time no see. Mo Xia laughed and walked into the house. Yi Xian was about to continue cooking when footsteps suddenly resounded from outside the hall. There were quite a lot of people. Yi Xian turned around and was stunned when he saw who it was. An Lanxiu. Lian Wanli. Shao Qi. Zhang Wenxiu. Xiao Dao. Jian Zizai. Second floor guru. And the 9th floor. They were all here. Looking at these people in front of him, Yi Xian felt like he was in a dream. After a long time, he smiled slightly, they're all here. His eyes were a little wet. The 9th floor walked in front of Yi Xian and laughed, I didn't expect to meet you in this way. Actually, I didn't want to come because you're so much stronger than me now. I can't show off in front of you, it's so annoying. Yi Xian smiled and said, be careful of being struck by lightning. The 9th floor laughed and patted Yi Xian's shoulder lightly, drink a few more cups later. Yi Xian nodded, okay. At this moment, the 2nd floor guru walked in front of Yi Xian and said with a smile, ever since I left you, my life has been much more comfortable. Yi Xian smiled, I sent someone to find you. The 2nd floor guru nodded, I know. It's just that you're moving too fast, I can't help you anymore. Yi Xian said softly, I'll always remember that you've helped me a lot. The 2nd floor guru smiled, can I ask you for a favor later? Yi Xian said with a smile, just ask. The 2nd floor guru smiled slightly, I won't stand on ceremony. Yi Xian said with a smile, don't stand on ceremony. The 2nd floor guru glanced around, I won't take up your time. With that, she retreated to the side. At this moment, Zhang Wenxiu walked in front of Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said softly, Wenxiu. Zhang Wenxiu blinked, how many of the women here have the kind of relationship with you that we have? Yi Xian, after an hour, everyone sat around the table, and Yi Xian had made more than 30 dishes. Just as everyone was about to eat, a voice suddenly sounded from outside the door, brother. Brother. Hearing this voice, Yi Xian's body trembled slightly, and he turned to look, and saw a little girl standing at the door. Yi Ling. Yi Ling walked in front of Yi Xian, and said with a smile, how can I be missing? Yi Xian hugged Yi Ling, and he hugged Yi Ling tightly, he was afraid that this was a dream. Therefore, he also activated the sword domain, but reality told him that this was not a dream, it was real. These people in front of him were all real. Not a single one of them was fake. Including Yi Ling. They were all real. Yi Xian looked at Yi Ling, and said softly, Ling, you seem to have grown up. Yi Ling said softly, brother, you seem to have aged a little. Yi Xian lightly scratched Yi Ling's little nose, and said with a smile, your brother will always be the most handsome. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian lightly, and said with a trembling voice, brother, I miss you very much. Yi Xian hugged Yi Ling tightly, and said softly, me too. But I don't dare to go find you, because there are too many dangers around me. I don't want to drag you down. Yi Ling hugged Yi Xian tightly, and said, this time, I won't leave. Even if we die, we will die together, okay? Yi Xian smiled, and said, okay. We will never be separated again. At this time, another woman appeared outside the hall, and when Yi Xian saw that woman, he was stunned at first, and then tears gushed out of his eyes. Yasushi Higashi. The Undying Imperial Clan's clan leader, Yasushi Higashi. Yasushi Higashi looked at Yi Xian, and said with a smile, there are too many people, so I have to come alone. Yi Xian said with a trembling voice, Patriarch, this. Yasushi Higashi walked into the hall, and said with a smile, let's eat first. Yi Xian was a little confused. After a while, he stopped thinking about those things that he couldn't understand. Let's eat. The cafeteria was very lively. Yi Xian was very happy. Everyone was here. Yasushi Higashi was still alive, which meant that everyone else was also alive. Late at night, Yi Xian left the cafeteria, and went to the roof of the cafeteria, where a bright moon hung in the sky. There was a woman sitting on the roof. Dao Yi. Yi Xian walked to Dao Yi, and said softly, "Is this all true?" Dao Yi looked at the bright moon, and said with a smile, "It's true." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi, and said, "The immortal imperial clan is not destroyed." Dao Yi said with a smile, "If I say that they are not destroyed, will you be happy?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi smiled, "They are not dead." Yi Xian shook his head, "But I saw them self-destruct." Dao Yi said with a smile, "Do you remember what I told you before?" Yi Xian was a little confused, "What?" Dao Yi blinked, "If you don't remember, then forget it. When you remember, you will understand why they are still alive." Yi Xian was about to say something, but Dao Yi suddenly put a wine glass in Yi Xian's hand, and then she also took a wine glass, and lightly clinked it with Yi Xian's, and said with a smile, "Happy birthday." "Happy birthday." Yi Xian was stunned. "Birthday? Is today my birthday?" Yi Xian's mind went blank. That was because he had never celebrated his birthday since he was young. No, he didn't even know his birthday. P.S. These 2 days, because Yi Xian was too miserable, I was scolded very miserably. Everyone said that Yi Xian did not have it easy, so they might as well let him die. And Dao Yi, no matter what, it's my fault for not writing it well enough. I'd like to take tomorrow off. I want to be a big magic sword for a day, relax, adjust my mentality, and reflect on myself while I'm at it. I also want to look for inspiration, please approve. Thank you. Chapter 1639. Under the moonlight, Yi Xian and Dao Yi sat quietly. Yi Xian looked at the moonlight in the sky. At this moment, he suddenly felt that everything was unreal. Dao Yi smiled. "It will be dawn soon." Yi Xian said in a low voice, "Will everything disappear?" Dao Yi turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. "Do you think that you are dreaming?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi suddenly pinched Yi Xian's arm. "Does it hurt?" Yi Xian nodded. "Yes." Dao Yi smiled. She looked at the moon in the sky and whispered, "I want to talk about some principles. Are you willing to listen?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi smiled. "Only when you have lost something will you know how to cherish it. When you have not lost anything, you will not cherish what you have in front of you. Because you will think that everything you have is a given. You should have heard of this principle. But those who have not lost something will not understand this feeling." Yi Xian nodded. "I understand now." Dao Yi suddenly smiled. "I am going to say something harsh. Are you willing to listen?" Yi Xian nodded. "I am willing to." Dao Yi smiled mischievously. "Very harsh." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. "It's fine." Dao Yi smiled. She raised her glass, and Yi Xian did the same. The two clinked their glasses gently and drank it in one gulp. Dao Yi lay on the ground. She crossed her legs. She looked at the sky and smiled. "I have investigated you and your father. Do you know the biggest difference between you and your father?" Yi Xian shook his head. Dao Yi smiled. "The biggest difference between you and him is that he has never admitted defeat. He has never compromised. He has never accepted his fate. No matter how miserable it was, no matter how painful it was, he still endured it. He had been defeated before, he had been in pain, and he had been even more miserable. However, he had never accepted his fate, nor had he ever admitted defeat. Most importantly, he had gone from ordinary to invincible. Deep in his heart, he had never relied on others. Of course, it was also because he had no one to rely on, but it was also because of this that his heart was incomparably strong. He's very, very ruthless, more ruthless than anyone I've ever met. He's not just ruthless to others, he's ruthless to himself. As she spoke, she turned to look at Yi Xian. You were at your best when you were in Qingcheng. At that time, you didn't rely on anyone, you only believed in yourself. But later on, along with the appearance of that woman in a plain dress, your mentality gradually changed. This change was fatal. Because at any time, you will not really despair. Why? Because the plain-dressed woman was here. She is invincible, your father is invincible, so you have nothing to fear. Yi Xian was silent. Dao Yi smiled. I know that most of your karma comes from others, including your disaster constitution, which is also because of your father and your sister. However, have you ever thought about what would happen if you didn't have them? Without them, it would take you at least 10 years to walk out of this firmament world. In other words, without them, the current you would at most be at the Dharma controlling realm, or even lower. It's not that your talent isn't good, nor is it that you don't work hard enough. It's just that this small place can only let you reach this realm. As she spoke, she picked up the wine glass beside her and took a small sip. Then, she continued, however, because of them, you were extraordinary from the beginning. For example, you have the plain-dressed woman as your path protector. She taught you the way of the sword Tao, and she guided you. You have the powerful crazy demon bloodline, and you have many benefactors, such as that area, that little white, the forces that your father left in this universe, such as the sword sect. Many people spent hundreds of thousands of years to reach the mortal extinguishing realm. However, you reached it when you were only in your 20s. As she said this, she glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Do you know how difficult it is to fight alone without anyone's help? It's very difficult. There are too many unfairness in this world. You once said that when some people are born, their starting point is the ending point of others. Do you know that your birth was exactly like that? In just a dozen years, you, Green City, Yi family, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince will be replaced by Yi Lang. The person who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's biological sister. When she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a family matter. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the family is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new crown prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi family's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years. Even now, he is fighting for the family. The family is unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince's position. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded. Yi Ling's right cheek instantly turned red and swollen. However, she didn't cry. She just held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "This subordinate, Jianghu, greets the crown prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. You can be my personal guard from now on." Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded slightly. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back." "Understood." Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu seemed to have seen something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes. His face was dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. "Who gave you the guts to touch my sister?" When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this moment, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt his head spin, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man." "How dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the elders of the Yi clan. "Why?" At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and asked timidly, "Great elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan. What are you interrupting for? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the great elder. However, she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. Once again, she bowed to the elders. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li clan for the rights to the mine. He is fighting for the clan, and it is unknown whether he is dead or alive. Yet, the clan is using a groundless excuse to strip him of his position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he is fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the prince's position, and it's everyone's wish. What are you shouting for? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry, and only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and said with a smile, what's your name? The guard quickly bowed. This subordinate, Jianghu, greets the prince. Yi Lang nodded, you're not bad. After I become the prince, I'll need 10 personal guards. From now on, you'll be my personal guard. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through water and tread on fire for the prince, even if it means death. Yi Lang nodded, drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall, do not hold back. Understood. Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the killing intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this time, Jianghu seemed to have seen something, and he suddenly stopped. Within the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. He was wearing a tight-fitting robe that was tattered and covered in blood. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a cold smile. Within the ancestral hall, all the elders began to frown. The great elder's eyes narrowed, and his face darkened. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, barking, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 1640. Between Dao Yi and Tian Shou, who won? No one knew. Dao Yi didn't immediately disappear with Yi Xian and the others. Instead, he slowly flew through the air. Dao Yi looked down and smiled. Look at the beautiful mountains and rivers. Everyone looked down. The mountains were connected to each other, stretching endlessly. It was a magnificent sight. Dao Yi smiled. What do you think? Yi Xian said softly. It's good to be alive. Dao Yi smiled. The world is too difficult, but there are also many beautiful things and people in it. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Ling and the others and smiled. At this moment, he felt very happy. The people he liked were all here. This was very happy. In the past, he felt that his life was very tiring and miserable. However, he neglected one thing. That was, the people he loved and the people who loved him, Yi Xian, were still here. Dao Yi said again, when a person comes to the world, other than suffering, there are other things. Yi Xian suddenly said softly, Dao Yi, can we talk to the alien race? Dao Yi smiled. Talk about what? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, peace. Dao Yi shook his head and sighed. Fool, have you ever seen an emperor talk to a beggar? This analogy isn't very appropriate. For example, a dog wants to be on equal footing with a human, and it wants to be on equal footing with a human. Will the human agree? She paused for a moment and continued, in any place, in any world, only the strong are respected. Without strength, even a dog is unwilling to pay attention to you. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Did you talk to your master? Dao Yi nodded. Yes. However, he failed. The alien race gave him two choices, either to die or to die. Hearing this, Yi Xian frowned. They didn't give him a way out? Dao Yi smiled. That's right. In the eyes of the alien dimensional race, humans are inferior life forms that don't have the qualifications to talk to them. Yi Xian was silent for a moment. He wanted to say something but hesitated. Dao Yi stopped. She looked at Yi Xian and smiled. You want to ask for help from that lady in plain dress? Yi Xian said solemnly, can I? Dao Yi shook his head. Don't ever think like that. The alien dimensional race can't defeat her, but they have a way to stall her. What will you do once she is held back? Moreover, based on my understanding of her, she doesn't care about this universe at all. From a certain point of view, she is even more dangerous than the alien dimensional people. What the alien dimensional people want is to occupy this universe, and that sister of yours, if she's in a bad mood, she might directly destroy this universe. As she spoke, she shook her head again. Little fellow, you don't understand her at all. She's a person who is extremely indifferent to life. Moreover, at her level, the universe, the myriad of things, and the living beings were all meaningless. Why? Because she had already transcended everything. Just like an immortal, do you think he would care about time? No, he wouldn't care, because he's immortal, his lifespan is unlimited. Or perhaps, in the secular world, does money have any meaning to him? Of course not. In his eyes, money is just a bunch of numbers. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Do you know who's the biggest obstacle in your growth? Yi Xian shook his head. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. It's your father and sister. Yi Xian frowned. Why? Dao Yi smiled. Because at any time, you will always have a reliance on them in the depths of your heart. Why did your father let you live? Why did your sister leave? Do you really think she couldn't sense my existence in the undying emperor clan? Do you really think she can't find us? Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. That's right. Qing, really can't find the laws of the universe? Really can't find them? With her strength, she can destroy the universe with a single slash. Can she really not find the laws hiding in this universe? No. She can definitely find them. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. Qing, I understand what you mean. Dao Yi smiled. In the next few years, you might be miserable. You don't mind, right? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Please be more ruthless. Dao Yi's lips curled up. You asked for it. Yi Xian nodded. The worse the better. Dao Yi smiled. Then he turned to look at Enlancio and the other women. If you're interested, you can go to Master's study room. There are many things to learn there that will be of great help to you. Enlancio nodded. Sure. Yi Ling looked at Yi Xian and nodded. I'll go too. Dao Yi smiled. Then we'll part ways here. I'm going to take him to another place. Enlancio nodded. Sure. Dao Yi waved his hand. Enlancio and the other women disappeared. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Are you really ready? Yi Xian nodded. I'm ready. Dao Yi smiled. I'll take you to a place you'll never forget. With that, she disappeared with Yi Xian. After a while, Yi Xian and Dao Yi appeared in a vast sea. Yi Xian looked around. The sea was vast and he couldn't see the end of it. Yi Xian was puzzled. This is? Dao Yi smiled. Dead Sea. Yi Xian was curious. Dead Sea? Dao Yi smiled. There are many dangerous places in this universe. This place is one of them. Yi Xian looked at the sea in front of him. Dangerous? Dao Yi nodded. Your realm has already reached the mortal destruction realm. It's not suitable for you to increase it in a short period of time. Since that's the case, we'll start with your fleshly body. Yi Xian was looking forward to it. How do I strengthen it? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. An ordinary fleshly body is unable to resist the alien races. Only a dimensional fleshly body can resist them. Do you know what a dimensional fleshly body is? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't know. Dao Yi smiled. This world is composed of space, matter, and time. Therefore, I'll use these three to temper your fleshly body. Especially time. Your fleshly body must transcend the limits of time. Only then will you have the ability to resist the alien races. Yi Xian nodded. I'm ready. Dao Yi smiled and punched Yi Xian's chest. Bang! Yi Xian's eyes widened. His fleshly body directly collapsed. Only his soul was left. Yi Xian was completely dumbfounded. Dao Yi smiled. To temper your fleshly body, you must first temper your soul. Only a powerful soul can support a fleshly body forged from dimensions. As she spoke, she waved her right hand. Yi Xian's soul directly floated into the sea. The instant his soul entered the sea, Yi Xian's eyes instantly widened. Ah! A heart-wrenching and lung-splitting scream suddenly resounded in the sea. In the sea, Yi Xian was about to rush out. At this time, Dao Yi smiled. If you want to come out, I won't stop you. Instead, I'll give you true freedom. In the sea, after hearing Dao Yi's words, Yi Xian took a deep breath. He forcefully endured it. He knew. If he gave up, Dao Yi would leave. Dao Yi continued. I won't force you. You can give up at any time. Really? Yi Xian roared angrily. I won't give up. Dao Yi blinked. Really? Yi Xian roared. If I say I won't give up, I won't give up. Dao Yi nodded. Then I'll give you something fierce. As she spoke, she waved her jade-like hand. In an instant, the stagnant water around Yi Xian seemed to come alive. It completely submerged Yi Xian. Ah! In the sea, Yi Xian suddenly screamed. Damn! Dao Yi, let's take it step by step. Don't be so fierce. Dao Yi smiled. You can handle it, right? Yi Xian, at this moment, Yi Xian was really uncomfortable. This was because the seawater could corrode his soul. This kind of corrosion would not really damage his soul. On the contrary, it would stimulate his soul. However, it was really painful. It was 10,000 times more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. The soul was different from the body. The pain that came from the soul was the most real. By the seaside, Dao Yi sat on a rock. She looked at Yi Xian with a faint smile on her face. In the seawater, Yi Xian was screaming like a pig being slaughtered. However, he did not get up. By the seaside, Dao Yi's smile grew wider. Initially, she felt that she needed to force Yi Xian. Hence, she wanted to use Yi Xian's closest person to provoke him. However, she now realized that there was no need for that. Rather than forcing a person, it was better to let him understand. Once he comprehended it himself. If you don't force him, he will force himself. Just like that, Yi Xian soaked in the Dead Sea for a whole month. He screamed for a whole month. In fact, during this period, Yi Xian almost could not hold it in anymore. However, in the end, he forced himself to hold it in. If he did not fight for it now, would he really have to rely on his father and sister for the rest of his life? As long as he did not die, even if it was 100 times more painful, he would endure it. He did not want to lose anyone. He did not want to be powerless again. Another month passed. At this moment, Yi Xian was no longer screaming. Because he realized that it did not seem to be that painful anymore. Another month passed. At this moment, Yi Xian was lying in the Dead Sea. He was very comfortable. The Dead Sea had no effect on his soul. It was just like taking a bath. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly appeared beside Yi Xian. She smiled and asked, "How do you feel now?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "Very comfortable." Dao Yi smiled and said, "Then we can go somewhere else." Yi Xian jumped up. "I'm looking forward to it." Dao Yi blinked. "You're not afraid anymore?" Yi Xian fell silent for a while and said, "At the beginning, I really wanted to give up because it was too painful. It was so painful that I wanted to die. But now I suddenly realized that the Dead Sea that made me want to die is just like that. Not only is it not painful, it's also quite comfortable to soak my soul in." Looking at Yi Xian for a while, Dao Yi said with a smile, "Life is like this. Most of the time, you will talk about the things that hurt you so much one day with a smile." As she spoke, she opened her palm. In her palm was a chicken drumstick. Dao Yi smiled and said, "This is your reward." Yi Xian laughed, picked up the drumstick, and started eating. Dao Yi said, "Let's go to the next place." Yi Xian nodded. "Okay." Just as Dao Yi was about to leave with Yi Xian, the surrounding space suddenly became strange as if it had become transparent. Yi Xian's expression became solemn. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Boom! Dao Yi's body trembled as if she had suffered a heavy blow. Her body became illusory and blood slowly flowed out from the corner of her mouth. P.S. I wanted to take a break today, but I still updated it. Because I know that no matter if it's good or bad, someone is waiting for me at this time. I hope I'm worthy of the wait. Chapter 1641. The sudden change caused Yi Xian's expression to change greatly. He was about to make a move when the surroundings returned to normal. Dao Yi turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled. "It's fine now." Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Just now, Dao Yi smiled. "It's just a small matter." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "You're injured." He could feel that Dao Yi was a bit weak at the moment. Dao Yi shook his head. "It's nothing serious." Yi Xian looked around and said, "Are they from the other dimension?" Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "They're already here?" Dao Yi smiled. "No. They're still in the other dimension." Yi Xian wanted to ask something else, but Dao Yi smiled. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Yi Xian said, bad news. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. They know of your existence. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, they think I'm God Yi? Dao Yi smiled. You are. Yi Xian asked softly, what's the good news? Dao Yi said, the good news is that the seal you left behind can still hold for a while. Yi Xian asked, 5 years? Dao Yi shook his head. It might not be that long. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. Can't you give me a bit more time? Dao Yi smiled. Plans can't keep up with changes. But it doesn't matter, there's still time. Let's go. Let's go to the next place. Having said that, she disappeared with Yi Xian. Not long after, Yi Xian followed Dao Yi to the depths of a starry sky. When they arrived at this starry sky, Yi Xian felt as though he had stepped into an ice house, and the coldness penetrated his bones. Dao Yi led Yi Xian away. The further they walked, the colder it became. Yi Xian could not help but ask, Dao Yi, where is this place? Dao Yi smiled and said, the coldest place in the universe. Yi Xian frowned. The coldest place? Dao Yi nodded. Absolute zero, there's no place colder than here. Even a transcendent state cultivator would die here. Upon hearing this, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed. Dao Yi smiled, afraid? Yi Xian nodded. I'm panicking a little. The corners of Dao Yi's mouth lifted slightly. This place is a good place to train your soul. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he said, is it to freeze me? Dao Yi nodded, and then she stopped and said, I'll teach you a cultivation technique for the soul. Circulate this cultivation technique and move forward in a while. The further you go, the more benefits you'll obtain. Remember, I won't force you to continue, and you can stop at any time. As she spoke, she tapped the center of Yi Xian's forehead with her finger. Bang! A huge amount of information instantly surged into Yi Xian's mind. A short while later, Dao Yi withdrew her finger and said, go. Yi Xian turned around and gazed into the distance, but there was only darkness at the end of his vision. He could not see anything. Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he walked slowly towards the distance. Dao Yi gazed at Yi Xian, and no one knew what she was thinking. The further he walked, the colder Yi Xian felt. However, when he circulated the cultivation technique that Dao Yi had given him, he noticed that his soul seemed to be absorbing something. Around 2 hours later, Yi Xian's entire body was trembling. It's too cold. It's so cold that it's abnormal. Yi Xian turned around to look at Dao Yi, and Dao Yi smiled. You can give up at any time. Yi Xian grinned. In your dreams. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly sped up. Run. At this moment, he was no longer walking. Not by walking, but by running. As he ran, Yi Xian's soul started to freeze, and he felt like his consciousness was gradually becoming blurry. As for his soul, he was on the verge of not being able to feel his own existence. However, Yi Xian was still running. He had no way out, and he didn't want to. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to slow down. It wasn't that he wanted to slow down, but he really couldn't run anymore. He was getting slower and slower. Before long, every step that Yi Xian took seemed to be extremely heavy. Most importantly, his soul was slowly turning illusory. It was going to disappear. Not far behind Yi Xian, Dao Yi was watching. In fact, she was feeling perturbed. Although she said that she wouldn't force Yi Xian, she was really afraid that Yi Xian would give up. It was too difficult to persevere. However, it was very easy to give up. The cultivation technique that she taught Yi Xian had 2 functions. The first was to absorb the elemental energy in this world to strengthen his soul. The second function was to protect his soul. Although he would be in great pain, the cultivation technique would ensure that his soul wouldn't dissipate no matter what. The longer Yi Xian persisted, the more benefits he would receive. If Yi Xian gave up, then Yi Xian's state of mind would instantly collapse. Because once a person gave up for the first time, there would be a second time, a third time. If Yi Xian really gave up, then Dao Yi's existence would be meaningless. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian, who was walking like a snail, and said softly, "Master, I believe you." In the distance, Yi Xian's pace was getting slower and slower. His eyes were staring into the distance, and there was only one thought in his mind. As long as he, Yi Xian, was alive, he would continue. As long as he didn't die, he would continue. Yi Xian's pace was getting slower and slower. Sometimes, he would only take one step after an hour. However, he was still walking. Just like that, 3 days passed. And in 3 days, Yi Xian had only taken less than 10 steps. At that moment, he only had one thought in his mind: continue. However, his consciousness was getting more and more blurry. 10 days passed. At that moment, Yi Xian had stopped at the same spot for 3 days. For 3 days, he hadn't taken a single step. Not far behind Yi Xian, Dao Yi was staring at Yi Xian. She had been staring at him for more than 10 days. Her eyes had never left him. At that moment, she was getting more and more nervous. Just like that, another 10 days passed. And Yi Xian still hadn't taken a single step. Another 3 days passed, and Yi Xian still hadn't taken a single step. Seeing this, Dao Yi slowly walked towards Yi Xian. "That's enough." At that moment, Yi Xian suddenly took another step. With this step, Yi Xian's soul surged like a tidal wave, and waves of soul force rippled in all directions. Dao Yi was stunned on the spot. At that moment, Yi Xian continued to walk forward. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian, and the corners of her lips curled up. After a while, Yi Xian disappeared in the depths of the starry sky. After a long time, Yi Xian suddenly lay down. At this moment, Dao Yi appeared beside him. Dao Yi looked down at Yi Xian and smiled. "Tired?" Yi Xian blinked his eyes. "Not tired." Dao Yi smiled. "Congratulations, you've succeeded." Yi Xian was confused. "Succeeded?" Dao Yi nodded. "You are now in the center of this star area. This is the coldest place. Even a supreme god would not be able to survive here. Even a supreme expert will die here. Unless this supreme expert has an indestructible will." Yi Xian asked, "Indestructible will?" Dao Yi smiled. "Actually, besides the body and soul, a person also has a will. Your will was very strong in the past, but you've never broken through your limits. Just now, you broke through your limits. The reason you don't feel cold now is because your will has taken form, and it's protecting your soul." Yi Xian immediately stood up, and then he opened his palm and a sword appeared in it. As he held the sword in his hand, Yi Xian instantly felt slightly different. It was an indescribable feeling, but it was definitely different. Dao Yi smiled. "Leave behind a strand of sword energy." Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he swung his sword lightly, causing a strand of sword energy to appear. The strand of sword energy didn't vanish. Dao Yi smiled. "Do you remember the sword energy your father left behind?" Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi said, "Then do you know why his sword energy was able to remain for tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years? Moreover, it's still so strong." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. "Sword Dao will." Yi Xian nodded. "Yes. This strand of sword energy you left behind can exist for at least 100,000 years. If there's no outside interference, then it can exist for even longer." Yi Xian gazed at Dao Yi. "Have I become stronger now?" Dao Yi smiled. "Of course. Unless your opponent is much stronger than you, otherwise, it's extremely difficult for them to destroy your sword energy and sword energy." Yi Xian grinned. "If I knew this would happen, I would have come here earlier to force myself." Dao Yi nodded. "If a person is willing to be ruthless and force himself, then he will notice that he is actually very outstanding." As she spoke, she glanced at the surroundings and said, "Now, we can start cultivating your body. Your will has attained the indestructible will, so it'll be much easier for you to cultivate this dimensional body. Yi Xian glanced at Dao Yi. Your main objective is to make my will indestructible and not my soul? Dao Yi said with a smile, you guessed wrong. I brought you here just to let you cultivate your soul, but I didn't expect that under a freak combination of factors, you would break through the limit of your will. I have to say, this is an unexpected surprise. Yi Xian smiled, then let's begin. Dao Yi waved her lily-white hand, and in an instant, the two disappeared. Not long after, Yi Xian and Dao Yi appeared in a strange space. Seeing his surroundings, Yi Xian was stunned. He had been to this place before. This place was exactly the same as the world inside the hidden armor. Dao Yi softly said, this is a world that Master created, imitating the alternate dimension. However, it's too different from the real alternate dimension. Of course, for Master to be able to do this, I have to say, it's really terrifying. Yi Xian looked up and saw some white dots. Dao Yi smiled, those are the transmission points to the alternate dimension. Ah Ming and the others are over there. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi, you two don't get along well? Dao Yi nodded, very. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, what's Ah Ming's attitude towards me? Dao Yi smiled, don't worry, she won't be your enemy. Yi Xian nodded, that's good. Dao Yi looked around, the dimension of this place can be said to be the limit of this universe. We will now use this dimension to cultivate your body. Yi Xian asked, how? Dao Yi smiled, devour this dimensional world. Yi Xian. Chapter 1642. Devour this dimension. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. Seeing Yi Xian's surprised look, Dao Yi smiled. Let me put it in another way. I will let you become one with this dimension. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, will devouring this dimension affect the outside world? Dao Yi shook her head. No. This is only a passageway leading to the otherworldly dimension, so its disappearance won't have any effect. However, once the seal on the otherworldly dimension is broken in the future, it will be directly connected to our universe. However, even if this place exists, it won't affect them much. Yi Xian nodded. I understand. Dao Yi suddenly said, do you still remember the books I showed you? Yi Xian asked, will those books be helpful to my body cultivation? Dao Yi smiled. Very helpful. Saying so, she suddenly pointed at the space between Yi Xian's eyebrows. Boom! Yi Xian's clothes instantly turned into ashes. Completely naked. Feeling a cold breeze on his crotch, Yi Xian's expression changed. Dao Yi smiled. Now, listen to my instructions. The process will be a bit painful, but it shouldn't be a problem for you. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. Next, Yi Xian began to cultivate his dimensional body. As Yi Xian cultivated, the strange dimensional space around him gradually began to tremble. After giving instructions, Dao Yi turned around and left. In the sky above the undying realm, the space suddenly trembled. The next moment, Dao Yi walked out. At this time, everything in the undying realm had returned to normal. Dongli Jing was still there. At this time, Dongli Jing appeared in front of Dao Yi. Dongli Jing looked at Dao Yi. How did you do it? In fact, she also didn't know how she and the others survived back then. Dao Yi smiled. This is a bit complicated. I won't explain too much. Higashi Yasushi shook his head. You did so much just to help him improve? Dao Yi said with light smile, I just want him to mature a bit. You really wanted to kill him from the start, didn't you? Higashi Yasuo suddenly asked. Dao Yi nodded. Higashi Yasushi asked again, then why did you change your mind? Dao Yi was silent for a long time before he smiled and said, because I found out that he and Master have become one. He is Master, Master is him. If I kill him, Master will also die. Dongli Jing asked in a deep voice, what do you know about the alien race? Dao Yi nodded. Understood. Higashi Yasushi looked at Dao Yi. How terrifying is he? Dao Yi suddenly opened her palm, revealing an ant slowly crawling on her palm. Dao Yi looked at the ant and said with a smile, the other dimensional people in our eyes are like humans in the eyes of ants. Although this is very frustrating, it is the truth. Higashi Yasushi said in a deep voice, your master once sealed the other dimensional people. Dao Yi blinked. Master is not a human. Hearing this, Higashi Yasushi's pupils shrank. Not a human? Dao Yi smiled. To be precise, he is half a human. Higashi Yasushi asked again, did he fail? Dao Yi nodded. He did not fail. It can only be said that he stalled for time. Higashi Yasushi said, he delayed for more than 100,000 years. Dao Yi shook his head. You are wrong. He only delayed for 10 years. 10 years. Higashi Yasushi frowned. 10 years? Dao Yi said softly, in our universe, time is uncontrollable and irreversible. But in the alien dimension, it is possible. More than 100,000 years have passed here, but in the alien dimension, they can shorten the time to 12 years. Hearing this, Higashi Yasushi's expression gradually became solemn. Do we have no chance at all? Dao Yi said with a smile, yes. That is, to let Master seal them again. However, it is more difficult than before. Because the alien dimension has already discovered him. Moreover, the alien dimension is even stronger than before. Saying this, she walked in front of Higashi Yasushi and took out an ancient book. Miss Yasushi, you are a person worthy of respect. This is a small gift from me. If Master wins in the future, this item will completely change the fate of your undying Emperor clan. If you lose, everything will be over. Saying this, she turned around and left. Higashi Yasushi looked at Dao Yi. My undying Emperor clan wishes to fight alongside him. Dao Yi stopped and said softly, Miss Yasushi, forgive me for being blunt. If I give your undying Emperor clan 100 years, you won't even be qualified to be cannon fodder in front of the alien dimension. After saying that, she disappeared. Higashi Yasushi remained silent for a long time. After leaving the undying Emperor clan, Dao Yi went to the Void Realm. Su Wuxin looked at Dao Yi. Do you have any instructions? Dao Yi smiled. Your nothingness tribe has regained its freedom. Regained its freedom. Su Wuxin frowned. What do you mean? Dao Yi smiled. What I mean is that your nothingness tribe has regained its true freedom. However, don't devour any more worlds. Live well. Saying this, she turned around and left. Su Wuxin suddenly said, don't we need to target Yi Xian anymore? Dao Yi waved her hand. There is no need. After saying that, she disappeared. Su Wuxin furrowed his brows. Dao Yi returned to Yi Xian's side. Currently, Yi Xian did not have a physical body, only a soul. Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. Then, she turned around and walked towards the white dots of light. Soon, Dao Yi passed through the white dots of light and arrived in a starry sky. As soon as Dao Yi appeared in this starry sky, the Time Law appeared in front of her. The Time Law looked at Dao Yi with an unfriendly expression. Dao Yi looked at the black vortex in the distance. At this moment, a woman walked out of it. It was Ah Ming. At this moment, there was blood at the corner of Ah Ming's mouth. Moreover, there was a deep wound on the right side of her face. When she saw Dao Yi, Ah Ming's eyes turned cold. What are you trying to do? Obviously, they knew what Dao Yi had done to Yi Xian. Dao Yi smiled. Ah Ming, are you feeling more and more strained lately? Ah Ming remained expressionless. What does it have to do with you? Dao Yi looked at Ah Ming and smiled. Ah Ming, you can't defend it. Ah Ming stared at Dao Yi. Even if I can't defend it, I will. Dao Yi shook her head. All right. You defend it. Ah Ming looked at Dao Yi. What are you trying to do? Dao Yi smiled. I came to find you this time because I need your help. Ah Ming sneered. Send you to hell? If that's the case, I'm very willing. Dao Yi said, help master. Help master. Ah Ming frowned. Dao Yi looked at the black vortex and said softly, Ah Ming, the extra-dimensional people have discovered master. Ah Ming's pupils shrank. How is that possible? Dao Yi smiled. You're underestimating the extra-dimensional people. Although they can't break through master's seal, it doesn't mean that their peak experts can't come to this world through another method. Ah Ming asked in a deep voice, the injuries on your body were caused by the extra-dimensional people? Dao Yi nodded. Ah Ming looked at Dao Yi. Why did you betray master back then? Dao Yi smiled. I'll explain this to you in the future. Right now, the most important thing is to deal with the extra-dimensional people and buy some time for master. Ah Ming was about to speak, but at this time, there was a sudden change. Not far from the three women, the black vortex suddenly trembled. Seeing this, Ah Ming narrowed her eyes and slowly clenched her right hand. At this time, a phantom floated out. With the appearance of this phantom, the smile on Dao Yi's face gradually disappeared. The phantom was like a transparent person, and its true appearance couldn't be seen. At this time, the phantom suddenly floated in front of Dao Yi and looked at Dao Yi. A moment later, the phantom suddenly disappeared. Seeing this, Dao Yi narrowed her eyes. Come back. As soon as she said this, she suddenly grabbed backwards. Bang! With this grab, in the strange space below, a giant hand suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. The giant hand clenched, and the space directly distorted into a strange vortex. Yi Xian, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly raised his head. At this time, he saw a strange face that seemed transparent. An extra-dimensional person. The extra-dimensional person stared at Yi Xian, but Yi Xian couldn't see its expression. At this time, Dao Yi appeared in front of Yi Xian. Dao Yi coldly looked at the extra-dimensional person. The extra-dimensional person suddenly disappeared, and Dao Yi immediately pointed her finger forward. Bang! The finger fell, and the space immediately turned into nothingness. Bang! Dao Yi retreated rapidly, and while she was retreating, the space in front of Yi Xian suddenly fluctuated strangely. Yi Xian's expression changed greatly, and he slashed down with his sword. Chi! The sword ray pierced through the air, but it was completely useless. Yi Xian's pupils shrank because he smelled a trace of death. At this time, Dao Yi suddenly appeared in front of him. Dao Yi stacked her hands together and fiercely slammed them forward. Destroy! Bang! The space in front of Dao Yi and Yi Xian suddenly turned into nothingness. Along with it, time also turned into nothingness. At this time, the figure had already retreated more than 10 zhang away. The figure coldly looked at Dao Yi. Finally, his gaze fell on Yi Xian, and he gave him a thumbs up before turning around. So weak. So weak. Saying so, he slowly disappeared. After the figure disappeared, Dao Yi looked at Dao Yi. Don't mind what he said. According to this universe's time, he has lived for at least 1,000,000 years. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, I'm a bit unhappy. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. At this moment, there was still blood at the corner of Dao Yi's mouth. Not only that, there was a deep fist mark on her abdomen. Seriously injured. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Do me a favor. Saying so, he approached Dao Yi and whispered a few words. Dao Yi blinked her eyes. Are you sure? Yi Xian nodded. Dao Yi thought for a while and then said, sure. After that, she suddenly disappeared with Yi Xian. In an unknown part of the starry sky, a sword cultivator wearing a white robe was walking slowly. At this moment, the swordsman suddenly turned around. Dao Yi and Yi Xian appeared in front of the swordsman. When the swordsman saw Yi Xian, he was slightly stunned. Then, he smiled. "You're looking for me?" Yi Xian nodded. "Big brother, long time no see." The swordsman smiled. "What's the matter?" Yi Xian sternly said. "I know Big Brother is lonely. I want to find an opponent for Big Brother." The swordsman looked at Dao Yi and shook his head. "If this girl's main body is here, I might be a bit interested." "But, is she your friend?" Yi Xian nodded. The swordsman smiled. "All right. She is actually not that weak." Dao Yi, at this time, Yi Xian suddenly pulled the swordsman's arm and said, "Big brother, let's go." After saying so, he directly disappeared with the swordsman and Dao Yi. When the three of them reappeared, they were already in front of the black whirlpool leading to the alternate dimension. Yi Xian pointed at the black whirlpool. "Big brother, you go there. It's fun there." The swordsman looked at the black whirlpool. A moment later, his eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. "Interesting." Yi Xian nodded. "Very interesting." The swordsman patted Yi Xian's shoulder. "I'm going." After saying so, he walked toward the black whirlpool. When he arrived in front of the black whirlpool, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Big brother, can you leave me a strand of sword chi? Just treat it as a souvenir." The swordsman hesitated for a moment. Then, he pointed with his finger and a strand of sword chi landed in front of Yi Xian. "Little guy, see you later." After saying so, he directly disappeared into the black whirlpool. Yi Xian placed the strand of sword chi in front of the black whirlpool and turned to look at Dao Yi. "With this strand of sword chi suppressing us, they definitely won't be able to come over in a short period of time, right?" Dao Yi was silent. Yi Xian walked to Dao Yi's side and whispered, "Is this considered cheating?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian hurriedly said, "I didn't ask my big brother to fight the alternate dimension. As for whether he wants to fight or not, that's his business. It has nothing to do with me." Dao Yi. P.S. The holiday is coming to an end. Did everyone have fun? Chapter 1643. Dao Yi rolled his eyes at Yi Xian, then shook his head. "Slippery fellow." Yi Xian grinned. As if he had thought of something, he said in a deep voice, "Dao Yi, isn't there a seal? How did the aliens get through the seal and come to us?" Dao Yi turned to look at the vortex, then said softly, "Because the seal has been loosened." The seal had been loosened. Yi Xian looked at the black vortex. "How long will it take for them to get here?" Dao Yi smiled. "With this sword aura, we can hold on for a while longer. 5 years shouldn't be a problem. However, once the seal is completely gone, this sword aura won't be able to stop them. This strand of sword chi can only prevent them from crossing over for a few years." 5 years. Yi Xian said softly, 5 years later, I'll fight against the aliens?" Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian was puzzled. "Did Gaji fail back then?" Dao Yi nodded again. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I'll study for 5 years. Can I be stronger than Gaji back then?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "Don't you have confidence in yourself?" Yi Xian shook his head with a smile. Indeed. At present, he couldn't even defeat the universal laws. Could he be stronger than the owner of the universal laws, Gaji, just by studying for 5 years? Impossible. Although he was confident, he wasn't arrogant. Dao Yi smiled. "Under normal circumstances, I definitely can't." Yi Xian asked, "Abnormal?" Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian was curious. "How abnormal?" Dao Yi blinked, then said playfully, "It's a secret for now." Yi Xian was about to speak, but a voice suddenly came from the side. "Did you guys automatically ignore the two of us?" Yi Xian turned to look to the side. There were two women there. Law of destiny and law of time. At this moment, the two women were also looking at Yi Xian. Ming suddenly walked in front of Yi Xian. She stared directly at Yi Xian as if she wanted to see through Yi Xian. It was a little strange, yet a little familiar. After a long time, Ming withdrew his gaze, and there was a trace of indescribable complexity in his eyes. We've truly become one. At that moment, she was certain that Yi Xian and God Ye's fate had truly merged into one. The current Yi Xian was God Yi. If Yi Xian died, God Yi would disappear as well. Ming turned to look at Dao Yi. How did this happen? Although she already knew that Yi Xian and God Ye's fates had merged into one, she did not know why that was the case. Under normal circumstances, Yi Xian was Yi Xian, and God Yi was God Yi. That was because God Yi carried his memories when he reincarnated. Even if God Yi had yet to awaken, God Yi should be a separate destiny entity instead of merging with Yi Xian. Dao Yi chuckled. Because reincarnating with memories is what Master hates the most. It's also against the rules he set back then, so, do you understand? Ming slowly closed her eyes. She naturally understood. Although God Yi had reincarnated, he did not choose to reincarnate with his memories. In other words, he was Yi Xian. He had truly reincarnated. As if thinking of something, Ming said, "No, if he didn't reincarnate with his memories, why can I feel his existence? It's very vague, but it's definitely there. Please continue to the next page." "Yes, why is that?" Dao Yi said softly, "The law of reincarnation did it. She forcefully preserved Master's memories and prevented them from dissipating." Ming frowned. In other words, if Master's memories are restored, Dao Yi shook his head. "That's impossible." Ming was puzzled. "Why?" Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "There are two reasons. First, Master is unwilling. Second, if the law of reincarnation really wants Master to be reborn, that woman will forcefully kill Master and erase him." "Woman?" Ming's expression darkened. She naturally knew who Dao Yi was talking about. It was that woman in the plain dress. If that woman was not there, the law of reincarnation might have succeeded. On the side, Time Elemental suddenly looked at Dao Yi. "Will he become Master?" Dao Yi smiled. "He is." Time Elemental glanced at Yi Xian. "Then Master's memories," Dao Yi chuckled. "It depends on whether this little guy is willing to restore those memories on his own." Yi Xian immediately shook his head. "I'm not willing. I don't want to be someone else." Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "You're not becoming someone else. God Yi is your past life. There's no conflict between the two of you." Yi Xian said, "I'm me. I just want to be Yi Xian." Dao Yi smiled. "You're still the woman in the plain dress, brother." Yi Xian was speechless. Most of the time, he was confused. "Who am I?" Right then, Dao Yi suddenly smiled. "Let me clarify for you. When Master was reincarnated, he became the woman in the plain dress, brother. However, at that time, he had yet to awaken and the woman in the plain dress was not that powerful. Later, there was a problem with the law of reincarnation, causing Master to die before he could awaken. After that, the woman in the plain dress rose and forcefully reversed the cycle of reincarnation to save you. You might be wondering why the woman in the plain dress only recognized you and not Master. At that time, Master had yet to awaken, so you were her real brother. She saved the purest of you. The karma between you and her has nothing to do with Master, so she only recognizes you." Yi Xian said solemnly, "You're saying that when I was Qing's brother, your Master had yet to awaken?" Dao Yi nodded. "Yes. That's why she saved you and only recognizes you. Of course, Master has nothing to do with her. She will not allow Master's memories to dominate your body because if Master's memories dominate your body, it would be equivalent to erasing you. Master is also unwilling to retain the memories of his past life. That's why your master's reincarnation, but a reincarnation without memories. As for master's past memories, you don't have to be so disgusted because even if you have his memories, you won't become him. In this life, you're Yi Xian. Unless master erases your memories of this life, you'll always be Yi Xian. No one can change that. That's because when master set up the law of reincarnation, he set a rule that a person can only live one life. Yi Xian said softly, I think I understand. God Yi was his past life. However, his past life was unwilling to reincarnate with his memories. Of course, it was impossible because Qing was there. Yi Xian felt a little ashamed at that thought. If it wasn't for Qing would he have already been erased? Although his past life was unwilling to reincarnate with his memories, the law of reincarnation did not think that way. As if remembering something, Yi Xian suddenly said, No. No. That's not right. Dao Yi blinked. How is it not right? Please continue to the next page. Right? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. I'm Qing's sister. What should I tell my father? If Qing had saved me, it would have been impossible for me to become my father's son. Dao Yi did not say anything. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi, waiting for an answer. After a long time, Dao Yi said softly, I can't tell you about this. You have to let your sister tell your father. Yi Xian frowned. Why? Dao Yi smiled. They must have their reasons for not telling you. I can't tell you. Yi Xian was speechless. Dao Yi continued, Master's memories are in your body. But don't worry, I won't let you recover them unless you are willing. Of course, even if you are willing, Master might not. He is the one who sets the rules. If he breaks his own rules, he won't let himself become that kind of person. So, you don't have to worry about this. Then, she turned to look at Ah Ming and Dao Yi. If you can contact the law of reincarnation, tell her to stop playing. If she keeps playing, she'll die. Ah Ming shook her head. I can't contact her. She said she was recuperating, but she disappeared. I've tried to find her, but there's no news. Dao Yi said softly, forget it. Let her be. Ah Ming suddenly said, Dao Yi, what's your purpose? Master's death had a lot to do with you. You can't deny it, right? Dao Yi nodded. I don't deny it. Ah Ming stared at Dao Yi. Can't you tell me now? Dao Yi smiled. Indeed, I can't. Ah Ming shook her head. I don't believe you. Dao Yi smiled. Ah Ming, I don't need you to believe me. I'll tell you. I, Dao Yi, have only wronged one person in my life, and that's Master. Apart from him, I don't owe anyone anything. Everything I'm doing now is not to atone for my sins, nor is it to get your forgiveness. Everything I'm doing now is purely because I want Master to live. That's all. Then, she turned to look at Yi Xian. Do you believe me? Yi Xian nodded. My intuition tells me that he didn't hate you at that time. The smile on Dao Yi's face gradually disappeared. After a while, she smiled. But I really betrayed him. Yi Xian said, was he sad when you betrayed him? Dao Yi lowered her head slightly and said softly, no. Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. In other words, he probably knew that you were going to betray him, right? The tears in Dao Yi's eyes suddenly flowed down. Yi Xian was about to speak when Dao Yi suddenly looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Actually, I'm really bad. As Ah Ming said, when Master raised me, he might as well raise a dog. At least, a dog won't bite its master. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, do you want to hear my opinion? Dao Yi smiled. Yes. Yi Xian nodded. If my sister wants to kill me, no matter the reason, I won't hate her. Do you know why? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. Why? Yi Xian smiled. Because in my heart, my sister is the most important, more important than my life. There's only one reason why he doesn't hate you. You're very important to him, more important than his life. Even if you really betrayed him, he won't be angry with you. Dao Yi suddenly laughed. She laughed and then cried. End of this chapter. Chapter 1644. Looking at the tearful Dao Yi, Yi Xian sighed in his heart. He didn't know what happened between Dao Yi and God Yi back then, but he knew it wasn't that simple. Especially Dao Yi's actions. He felt it was strange. She did betray them. In other words, she was definitely on the side of the alien race back then. But now, she was helping him. Whose side was she on? Yi Xian didn't ask because he knew Dao Yi definitely didn't want to tell him. At that moment, Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Don't be unreasonable. Then, she looked at Yi Xian. Start training your body. Yi Xian nodded. I'll go back to Qingzhou for a bit. Can I do it for an hour? Dao Yi smiled. Sure. Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming and Dao Yi, then nodded and turned to leave. After Yi Xian left, Dao Yi turned to Ah Ming. Summon them in Master's name. Ah Ming shook her head. I don't believe you. She still didn't believe Dao Yi. If Dao Yi could betray once, she could definitely betray again. As if knowing what Ah Ming was thinking, Dao Yi suddenly smiled. Did you see that alien race? Ah Ming's expression sank. She understood Dao Yi's meaning. The fact that alien race could appear here meant that the seal's effect was getting weaker and weaker. Once the seal disappeared, they would all die. At that moment, Time Law suddenly asked, "What do you need us to do?" Dao Yi smiled. Help Master become stronger. Time Law shook her head. Too late. Dao Yi asked, then, are we just going to wait for death? Time Law was silent. Dao Yi looked at the two women. Also, tell that Samsara girl to stop playing tricks. If she keeps playing, she'll destroy herself. With that, she turned and left. After Dao Yi left, Ah Ming softly asked, do you trust her? After a moment of silence, the law of time said, we can only trust her. Ah Ming nodded. I'll go find them. With that, she turned around and disappeared. The law of time also disappeared. After the girls disappeared, the sword light in front of the black vortex suddenly trembled. After returning from Qingcheng, Yi Xian began to crazily devour that strange world. Although he had tricked his big brother into going to another dimension, he knew that with his big brother's temperament, he wouldn't destroy the other dimension. Big brother only had one goal, and that was to find experts. Therefore, his elder brother going to the alternate dimension would at most cause some trouble there and buy him some time. Under Dao Yi's guidance, Yi Xian began to devour the surrounding dimensional world bit by bit. The process was painful. But this kind of pain was simply negligible to him. However, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he needed to adapt his soul to this dimensional world during the process of devouring. In other words, he needed to fuse his soul with this dimensional world. This was very difficult. Because he didn't know much about this dimensional world. But fortunately, with Dao Yi's guidance and the ancient books he had read, although it was difficult, he could still devour it. It was just that the speed was a bit slow. Just like that, day after day passed. 1 month later. Yi Xian's body slowly appeared. However, his current body was a bit strange. It didn't look like a normal person's body. Another 2 months passed. The dimensional world around Yi Xian had completely disappeared and turned into a land of nothingness. At the same time, his body had completely recovered. However, his current body was extremely strange. It was as if it was made of crystal. When Yi Xian saw his body, he was dumbfounded. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Dao Yi smiled and said, dimensional physical body. Your current physical body is a dimensional world. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. This appearance, Dao Yi said, you can make it return to a normal human body. With a thought, Yi Xian's body returned to normal. At this moment, Dao Yi suddenly took a step forward and punched Yi Xian's abdomen. Boom! Yi Xian's body trembled violently. The space around him boiled like a tidal wave. But Yi Xian was completely fine. Yi Xian was taken aback, and then said, this. Dao Yi smiled. The current you doesn't need to be afraid of the laws of the universe. Your current physical body is the strongest physical body in this universe. Even the laws of the universe like us can't hurt you. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, so abnormal? Dao Yi nodded. She gently touched Yi Xian's body and said, this dimensional world has been condensed into your body. Your body not only contains space and matter, but also the time dimension. However, you are not familiar with the time dimension. So, you can't use the time dimension. As she spoke, she looked at Yi Xian and smiled. Do you want to learn how to control time? Yi Xian nodded vigorously. Dao Yi's lips curled up slightly. There was a naughty smile on her face. But it's a little painful. Yi Xian said in a serious tone. Please torture me to your heart's content. Dao Yi suddenly pointed a finger at Yi Xian's forehead. Boom! Yi Xian disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, Yi Xian was already in a space surrounded by specks of light. At this time, Dao Yi's voice appeared in Yi Xian's mind. This is the world of the time dimension. The extra-dimensional people live in this kind of world. Look behind you. Yi Xian turned around and saw himself and Dao Yi behind him. At this moment, himself was talking with Dao Yi. Suddenly, Dao Yi punched himself in the abdomen. Yi Xian was struck dumb at the sight of that. Wasn't this what happened just now? Dao Yi's voice sounded again. In the world of the extra-dimensional people, the past, present, and future are real and can be changed. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, change the past? Change the future? Dao Yi said, that's right. Don't you feel invincible? Yi Xian nodded. If the extra-dimensional people could really do this, then they would be invincible. This daddy can't beat you now, but I can go back to the past and kill you. Thinking of this, Yi Xian felt his scalp go numb. Wasn't this race an invincible existence? At this time, Dao Yi suddenly said, the extra-dimensional people have a suppressive effect on other races because they can reverse time, the past and the future. However, they aren't invincible. There are two ways to deal with them. The first is to destroy the time dimension. If the time dimension is destroyed, it is equivalent to destroying them. Since time is gone, the past and the future will also be gone. However, it is very difficult to destroy the time dimension. Throughout the history of this universe, only 4 people have been able to do it. The former master, your elder brother, your father, and your younger sister. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, is there anyone in the extra-dimensional world who can do it? Dao Yi said, there are. However, there aren't many. Even in the extra-dimensional world, those who can directly destroy time are among the best. Yi Xian's complexion sank. After a while, he asked, what about the second method? Dao Yi said, the second method is to use time to kill them. Within a certain period of time, time can only be reversed once. When the opponent reverses time, you will also reverse it. For example, if the opponent goes back to the past, you will also go back to the past. When the opponent goes back to the past, they won't be able to reverse time again within a short period of time. If you kill them during this period of time, they will completely disappear. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what about the future? Can they go back to the future? Dao Yi said with a smile, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, it will be very difficult for them to go back to the future. Yi Xian was somewhat puzzled. Why? This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Dao Yi explained, you've neglected one point. The future is uncertain, it's unknown, and it's full of diversity. To put it simply, if you do something, it might lead to many consequences. The future is the same. If you make a decision now, it might lead to many futures. Therefore, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, they won't easily go back to the future, because the future might not be accurate. Moreover, going back to the future is very likely to reverse the present. This kind of uncertainty and instability is something they are afraid of. The time dimension of the future is a bottleneck for the extra-dimensional people. They can't completely control the future, so much so that they can't freely travel to the future. It can be said that this is also their weakness. Yi Xian said softly, in that case, even if it's an extra-dimensional person, they can't reverse the future, right? Dao Yi said with a smile, you're wrong again. They can go back to the future, but when they do, others will also be in the future. For example, if I want to go back to the future to kill you, when I go back to the future, you will also be in the future. If I can't kill you now, can I kill you in the future? It's very difficult, because in the future, you might even be stronger than me. If we can't defeat her now, we might not be able to defeat her in the future. Just like that plain-dressed woman, even if the other dimensional people went to the future, they still wouldn't be able to defeat her. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, what if the other dimensional people go back to the past and kill Qing'er when she was a child? If that's the case, won't we be able to kill them? Dao Yi smiled and said, you're not wrong to think that way. However, you've neglected a problem, and that is the dimension of time. If he wanted to return to her past and kill her, he would have to enter her time dimension. With her current strength, she could even erase time. If he entered her time dimension, wouldn't that be courting death? Therefore, if he wanted to kill her, there was only one way, and that was now. If he was stronger than her now, he would be able to kill her. There was no other way. Especially against people like this, don't ever think about the future, because her future might be much stronger than yours. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian said with a smile, from what you've said, it seems like the other dimensional people aren't invincible after all. Dao Yi said, that's for the woman in the plain dress. For others, like you. Can you sever time? If the other dimensional people wanted to kill you, they wouldn't even need to play any fancy tricks, they could just kill you with a single punch. Yi Xian, at this time, the space around Yi Xian returned to normal. Dao Yi appeared in front of Yi Xian. She looked at Yi Xian and said, from now on, you will begin to cultivate how to control time. Yi Xian nodded. All right. Dao Yi took Yi Xian and disappeared. In an unknown starry sky, a swordsman wearing a white robe was slowly walking. After walking for an unknown amount of time, the space in front of the swordsman suddenly trembled strangely, and a phantom appeared in front of him. The phantom said, human? The swordsman nodded. The phantom said, inferior life form. The swordsman looked at the phantom and slashed out with his sword. Chi! Before the phantom could react, the sword pierced through his body. The phantom sneered. How can you kill me? We other dimensional people exist in the time dimension, you. At this point, the phantom's voice suddenly became frightened. How is this possible? You can actually sever time. The swordsman sheathed his sword and walked in front of the phantom. He glanced at the phantom with a bit of doubt. Isn't it simple to sever time? Why are you so surprised? The phantom, sever time is a simple matter? The phantom's head was buzzing. The swordsman walked away. As if thinking of something, he said, in your world, is it very difficult to sever time? The phantom asked back. You think it's simple? The swordsman glanced at the sword in his hand. It's quite simple. The swordsman asked again, are all other dimensional people this week? The phantom. P.S. Hard to get a ticket. End of this chapter. Chapter 1645. The dimensional person was dead. Truly disappeared. Because swordsman's sword had directly erased the time dimension. On the contrary, the sword cultivator felt somewhat bored after killing an extra-dimensional being. He was a little disappointed. So weak? That shouldn't be the case. Swordsman looked into the distance and continued to move forward. It had been more than 100,000 years. Only when he met Tianming did he feel like he was reborn. The feeling of having an opponent was truly wonderful. Unfortunately, those two only cared about that little guy. But it didn't matter, the three of them would eventually fight. It was just that it was too boring during this period of time. As if thinking of something, Swordsman turned around and shook his head with a smile. I really envy that little guy. That little guy was naturally referring to Yi Xian. Being able to be defeated, wasn't that also a kind of happiness? If Yi Xian knew Swordsman's thoughts, what would he think? Swordsman retracted his gaze and continued to walk into the distance. He, the unfettered one, had no other requests. He only wished for life to be a little difficult. He didn't wish for death. He didn't wish for defeat. He only wished for someone to let him use 2 swords. Just 2 swords. Was that a high request? Beside the lake, inside the bamboo house, Yi Xian was sitting cross-legged on the ground. In front of him was Dao Yi. And beside them, Lanxiu, Shao Qi, and the others were also there. Everyone was quietly listening to Dao Yi's explanation of time. Dao Yi didn't teach Yi Xian alone, but Yi Xian's friends as well. For example, Lanxiu and the others, these people were all very outstanding and could become Yi Xian's helpers in the future. Needless to say, Yi Xian and the others were very shocked. Time. This was the first time they had a detailed understanding of time. And if time could be controlled, how terrifying would it be? But what Yi Xian didn't understand was why Dao Yi understood time so well. One must know that Dao Yi didn't understand the laws of time. He didn't ask any more questions. Just like that, about a month later, Dao Yi led Yi Xian and the others into the time dimension. In the time dimension, everyone looked at the people in the outside world as if they were gods looking at all living beings. In the eyes of those in the time dimension, the people outside were like transparent people. This was true dimensional suppression. Because the people in this universe didn't understand time at all, let alone reverse time. Half a month later, Yi Xian and the others began to practice. It was not to destroy time. With their current strength, it was extremely difficult to destroy time. They could only familiarize themselves with time and then control it. In fact, Yi Xian was a little emotional. In the past, he was basically exploring by himself. This kind of exploration was very slow because he had to solve many problems by himself. But now that he had someone to guide him, his cultivation speed would be twice as fast. He could avoid taking too many detours. Most importantly, he could now learn a lot of knowledge that he had never come into contact with before. At the same time, he also understood why he couldn't defeat these universal laws. Compared to these universal laws, he was just like a child in terms of martial arts. By the lake, Dao Yi was playing chess with the law of misfortune. Outside, it had begun to drizzle. It often rained in this place. Misfortune raised a chess piece and placed it down. Then, he said, Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors above, Yi Xian has no talent and no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as the crown prince is removed and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man in a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a young man with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. And on both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this moment, a timid voice suddenly sounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked at the voice and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old. Her 2 little hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale and looked a little weak. There was a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she rushed over despite her illness. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed slightly to the people in the ancestral hall and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is the crown prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The great elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a matter of the clan. Why are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The great elder suddenly raged. Whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me. At this time, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The great elder coldly replied, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, Yi clan's guards rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, this is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang. He knew that his chance to shine had come. The guard sneered, young master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen. However, she did not cry. She only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. What's your name? The guard quickly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded. You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed. He quickly bowed deeply. This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the crown prince, even if I have to die 10,000 times. Yi Lang nodded slightly. Drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't show mercy, understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu did not know what he saw, but he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder squinted his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger, leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Jianghu felt dizzy, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there. He rushed towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, your man? As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's entire face was a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced apart. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, tears welled up in her eyes. Brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides, there were the Yi clan elders. Why? Right at this moment, a slightly timid voice suddenly resounded within the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a hint of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that Yi Xian was to be replaced, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The girl called Yi Ling bowed to everyone in the hall, as she asked timidly, Great Elder, my brother, Yi Xian, is the prince. Why did you cripple him for no reason? The Great Elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. This is a matter of the clan, what are you butting in for? Leave. Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the Great Elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged, whether he's stripped or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away. At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. He should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder replied coldly, then flog him 30 times. Very quickly, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years, and even now, he's fighting for the clan. The clan is unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about? As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry, and only covered her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed. Subordinate Jianghu greets the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the prince, I need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Jianghu was overjoyed, and quickly bowed deeply. I'll go through fire and water for the prince, and I'll do anything for you. Yi Lang nodded, Drag him away. This person is causing trouble in the ancestral hall. Don't hold back, understand? Jianghu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Jianghu saw something, and suddenly stopped. Inside the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside the hall. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. In the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder squinted his eyes, and his face was dark. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Jianghu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Jianghu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Bang! Jianghu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. Yi Lang did not stop there, and charged towards Jianghu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, "Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you!" Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Jianghu's chest. Pooh! Jianghu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly, while Yi Xian lifted his head to look at him, asking savagely, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stomped on Jianghu's face. Jianghu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me!" Yi Xian did not care about Jianghu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Jianghu, and kicked Jianghu's head. Pung! Chapter 1646. Pericelestial. His current sword Dao realm had reached mortal obliteration. Any higher and he would be pericelestial. However, he did not even know what pericelestial was now. It was a little difficult. By the lake, Dao Yi was lying on the stone steps with her legs crossed, looking a little relaxed. Beside her was Adversity. Adversity said in a low voice, "The one who is most likely to be that fellow beside him is Yi Ling." Yi Ling. Dao Yi said softly, "It's her." Adversity said in a low voice, "She sealed all her memories?" Dao Yi nodded, "Yes." After a long silence, Adversity said softly, "I admire her very much." Dao Yi smiled, the depth of her love. Adversity looked at Dao Yi, "If you were given a chance, would you do it?" Dao Yi shook his head, "No." Adversity was a little curious, "Why?" Dao Yi smiled and did not speak. Adversity did not ask again. At this moment, it suddenly rained. Adversity looked up into the starry sky. "Are you really not going to give him any hints?" Dao Yi said softly, "There are no shortcuts on the path of Dao Yi. He can only rely on himself." Adversity suddenly asked, "What if he can't rely on himself?" Dao Yi shrugged, "Then it's up to Dad. If there's really no other way, rely on your sister." Adversity was speechless. Cultivation knew no time. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Yi Xian had been sitting quietly in the starry sky for a month. During this month, he was completely in meditation. What was God? For a month, he had been thinking about this question. He was thinking very seriously. However, no matter how he thought about it, he could not understand it. At this moment, Yi Xian deeply felt his own shortcomings. Foundation. Accumulation. He lacked foundation and accumulation. Along the way, he had progressed too quickly. As Dao Yi said, others could reach mortal obliteration after tens of thousands of years, but he had reached it in his 20s. Was there really no problem? Of course there was. He had too little experience, his foundation was too shallow, and he had not gone through the accumulation of time. He was too impetuous. Everything he does, he wants to succeed quickly. This was his biggest problem right now. Thinking of this, Yi Xian could not help but smile bitterly in his heart. Walking too fast wasn't entirely a good thing. Yi Xian opened his eyes and looked at the sword in his hand. The worldly realm. What was the mortal realm? It was to be ordinary, to return to simplicity. Really? Why were ordinary swords strong? This was because the ordinary sword was real. When the sword slashed down, it would strike straight at the essence. What about above the mortal sword? Enthrall. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly shrank. Soul. Soul. Mortal swords could slash the body, but did this spirit entrancement only target the soul? Soul. Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand and fell into deep thought. At this moment, he recalled the battle with the peri-celestial powerhouse. As he thought about it, the corners of his lips curled up. Because he realized that the reason why those peri-celestial experts could suppress him was because they could suppress the soul. The physical body was only the surface, the soul was the true essence. A person's true death was the disappearance of the soul, not the disappearance of the physical body. As long as the soul existed, the physical body could be reconstructed. The soul was the true essence. Mortal swords slash the physical body, spirit entrancement slash the soul. Thinking of this, Yi Xian suddenly saw the light. Of course, he did not directly reach spirit entrancement, but he was no longer confused, because he already had a direction. Soul. Yi Xian directly took out the soul-suppressing sword and began to communicate with it. He wanted to understand this soul in detail. In addition to communicating with the soul-suppressing sword, he also, this chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. He recalled in detail the books about souls that he had read in the bamboo hut. Since spirit entrancement was related to the soul, he naturally wanted to understand this soul. When Yi Xian was studying the soul, Dao Yi only took a glance, but she did not say anything and left. Dao Yi arrived at the entrance of the alternate dimension. In front of the black vortex, the strand of sword chi was still there. However, this strand of sword chi was slightly trembling. Looking at the trembling strand of sword chi, Dao Yi sank into contemplation. After a long time, Dao Yi turned around and left. Turning around, Dao Yi arrived at a vast starry sky. The starry sky was silent. And at the end of the starry sky, a woman wearing a plain dress was slowly walking. The plain dress woman. At this time, the plain dress woman stopped. Dao Yi appeared in front of the plain dress woman. She looked at the plain dress woman and said with a smile, "Want to play chess?" The plain dress woman nodded, "Okay." Dao Yi waved her lily-white hand, and a chessboard appeared in front of the two women. Dao Yi played black, while the plain dress woman played white. Dao Yi picked up a chess piece and placed it down, saying with a smile, "I'll go first." The plain dress woman's expression was calm, "As you wish." Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman, "Are you waiting for him?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked, "Can I ask a few questions?" The plain dress woman picked up a chess piece and placed it down, "I can't guarantee an answer." Dao Yi smiled, "What level has Senior reached?" The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi, "Invincible." Invincible. Dao Yi blinked, "Invincible for a certain period of time?" The plain dress woman was expressionless, "Always invincible." Dao Yi was silent. The plain dress woman picked up a chess piece and placed it down. "Is there a problem?" Dao Yi picked up a chess piece, paused for a while, then placed it down, saying with a smile, "Senior, do you know about the alien race?" The plain dress woman said, "Ants." Ants. Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman, "Ants?" The plain dress woman suddenly said, "Don't use your knowledge to measure me. Miss, you know nothing about power." Nothing. Dao Yi was silent for a while, then smiled, "Senior, the alien race has people who can go to the future. Not only can they go to the future, they can also reverse it." The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi, "So what?" Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman, "Senior, you should know what this means." The plain dress woman suddenly asked, "What is above time?" Hearing this, Dao Yi was stunned. What is above time? The plain dress woman looked at Dao Yi, "Is time the limit of this world's power?" Dao Yi's two fingers held the chess piece tightly. After a while, she said softly, "Please enlighten me, Senior." The plain dress woman said, "Let me ask another question. In this aspect, you and I are not on the same level. Talking is boring." Dao Yi was silent for a while, then placed the chess piece down, saying with a smile, "Senior, the reason you stayed in this universe is to wait for him to grow, right?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked, "You want him to become an expert like you?" The plain dress woman nodded. Dao Yi asked again, "Is that it?" The plain dress woman was silent for a while, then said, "You want to ask if I have any other goals?" Dao Yi nodded. The plain dress woman looked towards the depths of the starry sky. "I want to die. I want to die." The surroundings suddenly went silent. Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman, and at this moment, he suddenly felt a wave of sorrow. Invincible. This woman is too strong. But this strength is a form of loneliness, and it's a form of pain. Where is the limit of the martial Dao? Where is the limit of the sword Dao? What is the plain dress woman pursuing? Is it the limit? It's not the limit of the martial Dao or the sword Dao, it's her. This chapter isn't finished, please continue to the next page, My Own Limit. The plain dress woman suddenly raised a chess piece and placed it down. "I want him to leave with me." Dao Yi looked at the plain dress woman. "Where to?" The plain dress woman glanced at the depths of the starry sky and didn't speak. Dao Yi didn't ask any further. After a short moment of silence, Dao Yi asked again, "What if he can't grow?" The plain dress woman spoke softly, "Then I won't leave." Dao Yi came to an understanding when he heard this. The plain dress woman wanted to take Yi Xian with her, but Yi Xian was truly too weak right now. She hoped that Yi Xian would truly grow. Dao Yi didn't ask any further questions and concentrated on the game. Because she noticed that this woman's skill in chess was extremely high. An hour later. The plain dress woman suddenly stood up. "You've lost." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Dao Yi gazed at the chessboard and laughed bitterly. This was the first time in over 100,000 years that she'd lost. Even her master from all those years ago hadn't been able to defeat her in chess. Yet at this moment, she'd lost to this plain dress woman. She was a woman with an extremely terrifying intelligence. However, this woman disdained to play with intelligence. Why play with such flashy things when a single strike of the sword can solve it? Meanwhile, the plain dress woman suddenly stopped moving. "You probably have more questions." Dao Yi nodded. "Do you have any suggestions towards his sword Dao?" The plain dress woman shook her head. "No." Dao Yi blinked. "Aren't you going to give him some pointers?" The plain dress woman thought for a moment, then said softly, "My sword Dao isn't suitable for him. He needs to figure out a sword Dao that belongs to him." Dao Yi nodded. "I understand." The plain dress woman suddenly said, "Tell him that he can deal with the other dimension by himself. If he can deal with the other dimension by himself, I'll come looking for him and give him a reward." Dao Yi asked, "What if he can't?" The plain dress woman glanced at Dao Yi. "I believe in him." As soon as she finished speaking, she walked towards the distance. Behind her, Dao Yi was silent. After walking for a short while, the plain dress woman suddenly said, "Miss, time and space can be transformed into each other. Time has never been above space, they're equal. The people of this universe mostly only study space, not time. Therefore, the people of this universe are very weak. While the other dimension only studies time and ignores space, they're also very weak. Without the dimension of space, how can there be the dimension of time? All the dimensions of time are built on the foundation of the dimension of space. If Miss wants to advance further, you must understand this point." Behind her, Dao Yi stared at the plain dress woman, his heart in turmoil. "Senior, do you know what would happen if the other dimension knew about this?" The plain dress woman lightly smiled. "Would they be invincible?" Dao Yi was silent for a moment, then said, "Senior, what about time and space?" The plain dress woman said, "Multiple dimensions." Dao Yi frowned. "What's multiple dimensions?" The plain dress woman was silent for a moment, then said, "Even if I explain it to you, you might not understand, so I won't explain. If you have time in the future, learn more and learn less about those fancy things. In my opinion, Miss is no different from an illiterate person." Dao Yi, seeing the plain dress woman gradually walking away, Dao Yi couldn't help but ask, "Senior, why do you know so much?" The plain dress woman suddenly stopped and turned to look at Dao Yi. "Do you think I walk in this starry sky every day just to look at the stars?" "Miss, I'm also learning. The time, space, and dimensions you discussed with me are things I've been playing with for hundreds of thousands of years. If it wasn't for the fact that you helped my brother, I really wouldn't want to talk about these things with you. It's really too childish, and you're deliberately mystifying it, thinking that it's so high and mighty, making me feel awkward." After saying that, as if she was afraid that Dao Yi would ask more questions, she directly disappeared into the depths of the starry sky. Dao Yi had a dumbfounded look on his face. P.S. Did you think that I went to the Great Treasure Sword purely for the sake of it? I went to look for inspiration. You bunch of scum, always misunderstanding me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1647. In the starry sky, Dao Yi remained silent for a long time. At first, she simply thought that the plain-dressed woman's swordsmanship was very powerful. However, she was wrong. The woman's strength was not just due to her swordsmanship. The woman's knowledge had already surpassed this universe and the other dimensional people. Why was the woman so powerful? Why was she getting stronger and stronger? Because she was also studying. Thinking of this, Dao Yi shook her head and smiled. After so many years, this was the first time she was called illiterate. Of course, she could not refute it. In front of the woman, she was indeed illiterate. After a while, Dao Yi turned around and left. Dao Yi returned to the bamboo house by the lake. At that moment, Yi Xian was crazily studying the ancient books about souls left behind by God Yi. Study. Previously, he had never properly cultivated his soul. Even if he did, he would only devour some souls. He had never systematically cultivated his soul. Now that he had come into contact with the knowledge of souls, he was extremely shocked. Soul. This was a point that he had neglected all this while. Dao Yi glanced at Yi Xian, who was studying in the distance. She did not disturb Yi Xian. About an hour later, Yi Xian left the bamboo house and arrived at a starry sky. After entering the starry sky, his soul directly left his body. Comprehension. By the lake, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Dao Yi. It was Ah Ming. Beside Ah Ming was the law of time and a woman. The woman was wearing a black robe and a veil. Law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect looked around. Where's Master? Dao Yi smiled. He's cultivating. Let's not disturb him for now. The law of cause and effect's gaze fell on Dao Yi. What are you trying to do? Dao Yi said, follow me. After saying that, she disappeared with the women. Soon, the women arrived at the black vortex that led to the other dimensional world. The law of life was also here. Dao Yi, the law of fate, law of time, law of cause and effect, law of disaster, and law of reincarnation. Of the 9 great laws, 6 were gathered here. When the girls saw each other, their emotions were a little complicated. Dao Yi walked to the black whirlpool and looked at the sword qi. Look. The girls looked at the sword qi. Soon, Ah Ming frowned. It's dissipating. Dao Yi nodded. This sword qi is disappearing bit by bit. In other words, the alien dimensional race has already made their move. Ah Ming looked at Dao Yi. Is the seal going to disappear soon? Dao Yi nodded. Very soon. Ah Ming frowned. Immediately? Dao Yi said with smile, it seems like the alien races are still somewhat afraid of Master. Ah Ming said in a deep voice, they have already defeated Master back then. Why do they still need to fear Master? Dao Yi said softly, although they won, they won. However, Master also stopped their footsteps. Ah Ming nodded. Understood. Dao Yi smiled and said, I will go in for a while, I will leave the Master to you. With that, she turned around and walked towards the black vortex. At this time, Ah Ming suddenly said, what are you going to do? Dao Yi didn't even turn her head. Die. With that, she disappeared into the depths of the black vortex. Ah Ming and the others frowned when they saw that. At this time, Ah Ming was about to enter, but she was stopped by the misfortune law. The misfortune law said in a deep voice, "Trust her." Ah Ming looked at the black vortex and didn't say anything. The misfortune law said, "The most important thing now is to help Master improve." Ah Ming shook her head. "Misfortune, forgive me for being blunt, but we can't put all our hopes on Master. In 5 years, even if Master recovers to his peak, what can he do?" The misfortune law didn't say anything. Ah Ming said again, "What does Dao Yi want to do?" The misfortune law shook her head. "I also don't know." Ah Ming looked at the black vortex and said softly, "I still can't see through her. Among us sisters, she and that guy are the most mysterious." The misfortune law looked at Ah Ming. "Back then, Master told us not to hate him." Ah Ming slowly closed her eyes. Meanwhile, the transmigration law suddenly said, "Based on the current situation, we have no chance of winning. Even if Master recovers to his peak." The life law nodded. "Indeed, we have no chance of winning." The misfortune law said softly, "Trust Dao Yi. Trust Dao Yi." All the women fell silent. Meanwhile, Ah Ming suddenly turned around. In the next moment, she vanished on the spot, and when she appeared again, she was in front of Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian's aura was rising explosively. At this moment, Yi Xian's soul had returned to his body. Meanwhile, the other laws had appeared here as well. All the women were looking at Yi Xian. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and the starry sky in an area of 5,000 kilometers around him rippled. Divine Ascension. At this moment, he'd entered Divine Ascension. The biggest difference between Divine Ascension and Mortal Ascension was that after entering Divine Ascension, one's soul would become even stronger. Entering Divine Ascension was the realm of transcendence. Divine Ascension was the realm of transcendence. There was actually a huge difference between the realms of the two. However, the difference in combat strength between the two wasn't that huge. Because if the body was strong enough, it could surpass the soul. Just like before, he could rely on the war god armor and the power of his bloodline to fight against godly realm experts. Meanwhile, Ah Ming suddenly said, "How do you feel?" Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming. "I feel very strong." Ah Ming's brows raised slightly. "Want to exchange a few moves?" Yi Xian nodded. Ah Ming suddenly vanished on the spot, and Yi Xian immediately stabbed with his sword. Bang! Yi Xian instantly retreated tens of thousands of meters. When he came to a stop, the sword in his hand immediately cracked. After the sword spirit left, all his swords were ordinary swords now. Yi Xian glanced at the cracked sword in his hand, and then he looked at Ah Ming. "So strong." Ah Ming glanced at Yi Xian's body. "Your body is really good." Yi Xian took a deep breath, feeling somewhat excited. Seeing this, a trace of surprise flashed in Ah Ming's eyes. "You don't seem to be discouraged at all." Yi Xian smiled. "Why should I be discouraged? You are stronger than me, and this is a good thing." Ah Ming was somewhat puzzled. "Why?" Yi Xian grinned. "Because this way, I can know my own shortcomings." Shortcomings. Was failure a bad thing? No. Failure was a good thing. Although he was defeated right after breaking through, he wasn't discouraged at all. That was because failure could clear his mind and let him know his shortcomings. Hearing Yi Xian's words, Ah Ming nodded slightly. "You surprised me." Yi Xian smiled. "Where is Dao Yi?" Ah Ming looked at Yi Xian. "He went to the alternate dimension." Yi Xian frowned. "Went to the alternate dimension?" Ah Ming nodded. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "What is she doing there?" Ah Ming said, "The seal has loosened. She should be going there for this matter." Yi Xian's expression sank. "Will there be any danger?" Ah Ming nodded. "There will be." Yi Xian remained silent. Ming looked at Yi Xian and also didn't speak. Yi Xian suddenly said, I will go find her. With that, he turned around and left. Ming stared at Yi Xian. If she is in danger, how are you going to save her? Yi Xian didn't even turn his head. I will commit suicide in the alternate dimension. Everyone will die together. Ming, soon, Yi Xian arrived at the black vortex leading to the alternate dimension. When he saw that the majority of swordsmen's sword chi had dissipated, his expression sank. Even Big Brother's sword chi was dissipating. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian was about to enter. At this time, Ming appeared in front of Yi Xian. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Ming said, I will go with you. Yi Xian was stunned. He thought that Ming was here to stop him. Ming said, I also want to go and take a look. Yi Xian nodded. Okay. At this time, the law of disaster and the others suddenly appeared. Disaster looked at Yi Xian. Are you sure you want to go in? Yi Xian nodded. Disaster said in a deep voice, with your current strength, going in is no different from sending yourself to death. Yi Xian smiled. Roughly what level do I have to cultivate to in order to not send myself to death? Disaster was silent. Even if Yi Xian cultivated to the peak state of his previous life, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the alternate dimension. Yi Xian smiled. I also want to work hard and use my own strength to change everything, but I know that it's not realistic. However, I won't give up. I will do my best. If I still can't defeat the alternate dimension in the end, then I deserve to die. I admit it. Humans could lose. However, they had to do their best, because once they did their best, even if they lost, they wouldn't regret it. How could there be perfection in life? It was enough to do one's best. He could clearly see that even if he cultivated for another 10 years, he still wouldn't be able to defeat the alternate dimension. And the alternate dimension definitely wouldn't give him 10 years. There was no difference between entering now and entering later. After a moment of silence, Disaster said, we will go with you. Yi Xian nodded. No need, you guys stay here. I'm afraid the alternate dimension will use other methods to enter this world, so I need you guys to guard this place. Disaster looked at Yi Xian. Promise us that you will come back alive. Yi Xian smiled. I don't dare to promise. After saying that, he and Ming turned around and entered the black vortex. Right after Yi Xian and Ming entered the black vortex, a woman suddenly appeared. The expressions of calamity and the others instantly changed violently when they saw this woman. This woman was none other than the woman in a plain dress. The sudden appearance of the woman in a plain dress caused Disaster and the others to be slightly stunned. Why did this woman suddenly appear here? The woman in a plain dress paid no attention to Disaster and the others. She just stood in front of the black vortex. Disaster glanced at the woman in a plain dress. What are you going to do? The woman in a plain dress looked at the black vortex. Wait for him to come out. Disaster hesitated for a moment, and then said, why don't you go in and look for him? The woman in a plain dress glanced at Disaster. Does it have anything to do with you? Disaster, at this moment, the law of life suddenly said, thank you, Senior, for not killing me. Actually, Dao Yi couldn't save life in front of the woman in a plain dress. At that time, the woman in a plain dress had noticed that Dao Yi was saving life. However, she hadn't stopped Dao Yi, nor had she killed the law of life. Otherwise, even Dao Yi wouldn't have been able to save the law of life. The woman in a plain dress didn't respond to the law of life. The law of life's life wasn't important to her at all. She could kill him. Even if she didn't. Meanwhile, Disaster said, what if he can't come out? The woman in a plain dress remained expressionless. Then I'll go in. Disaster was slightly curious. What for? The woman in a plain dress glanced at Disaster. Go in and look at the stars. Disaster. Chapter 1648. After Yi Xian and Ah Ming entered the black vortex, they arrived at a strange spatial passage. Spatial travel. Their speed was extremely fast, so fast that Yi Xian found it hard to adapt to it. If not for his physical body having reached the fourth dimension, he would not be able to survive in such a space. Yi Xian looked into the distance. How long will it take for us to reach the alternate dimension? Ah Ming shook her head. I have never been to the alternate dimension. Yi Xian turned to look at Ah Ming, somewhat surprised. Never been there? Ah Ming nodded. The seal that Master left in the past blocked the alternate dimension, as well as our side. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Ah Ming, do you know the origin of Dao Yi? Ah Ming said, are you trying to say that she might have come from the alternate dimension? Yi Xian nodded. Ah Ming smiled. Why do you think so? Yi Xian said in a deep voice, her understanding of time might be above the law of time, right? Ah Ming nodded. It is indeed above the law of time. Yi Xian said softly, then there is only one explanation. She is an alternate dimension. Ah Ming did not say anything. Yi Xian asked, what do you think? Ah Ming asked, what if she really is an alternate dimension? Yi Xian was silent. What if Dao Yi was an alternate dimension? Why would she help them fight against the alternate dimension? That didn't make sense. At this time, Ah Ming said softly, I kind of understand why she did it. Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming, but Ah Ming did not say anything. At the end of the spatial passage, a woman was walking slowly. It was Dao Yi. After an unknown amount of time, Dao Yi suddenly stopped. In front of her was an endless starry sky, and this starry sky was filled with strange black runes. Seal. This was the seal that God Yi had left behind. After passing through this starry sky, they would reach the alternate dimension. Looking at those dim black runes, Dao Yi shook her head and smiled. She knew why the seal had dissipated so quickly. It must be that swordsman. If swordsman wanted to go to the alternate dimension, he would have to pass through the seal. Obviously, when swordsman went to the alternate dimension, although he didn't directly break the seal, he still heavily damaged it. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Dao Yi. From the appearance, it seemed to be a woman. The phantom existed in the dimension of space, so normal people could not see her. Dao Yi smiled and said, let's talk. The phantom shook its head. You don't have the qualifications. Dao Yi looked at the phantom. Letting him go is the same as letting the alien race go. The shadow said, you seem to have forgotten your own identity. Dao Yi said with smile, I have not forgotten my identity, that is why I came to talk to you. Letting him go is the same as letting the alien race go. The shadow said, he killed 13,000 of my people back then, have you forgotten? Dao Yi was silent. The shadow said again, that year, we also gave him a chance, but he did not choose it. This time, we will not give him another chance. And you seem to have forgotten the reason why you stayed here. Not only did you not kill him, you are even helping him. Do you know what you are doing? Dao Yi said softly, I know. The shadow said, I think you don't know. Do you know how many of our people died in the past 10 years? Dao Yi didn't say anything. The shadow continued, he was kind to you back then, so I can understand that you have feelings for him. But have you forgotten about our people? Dao Yi looked at the shadow. I am not begging you to let him go, I want you to understand that he is different from before. The previous master was a loner, but the current him is not. If you touch him, the alien race will be consigned to eternal damnation. The shadow said, are you talking about that plain-dressed woman? Dao Yi slightly narrowed his eyes. You already know of her existence. The shadow said, yes. Dao Yi stared at the shadow. She wants to use the alien race to temper Master. If the alien race really touches him, when Master is unable to resist you, she will definitely act. Are you sure you can deal with her? The shadow sneered. If she is really strong, why doesn't she come to our alien race? Dao Yi sighed inwardly. It wasn't that the plain-dressed woman didn't want to go to the alien race, but that she didn't care about it. This woman's strength not only surpassed this world, but also the alien race. She was just waiting for her brother to grow up. But she was very clear that even if she explained it to the alien race, they wouldn't listen. At this time, the shadow said again, Dao Yi, you still have a chance to atone for your crimes. As long as you break the seal, I can guarantee you that the patriarch will let bygones be bygones. Dao Yi shook his head. I won't. The shadow suddenly swooped down and grabbed Dao Yi's throat. Do you really want to betray your race for a lowly creature? Dao Yi stared at the shadow. Don't insult him. The shadow roared. He is a lowly creature. Dao Yi suddenly kneed the shadow. Bang! The illusory figure was sent flying, and in the next moment, Dao Yi rushed out, causing the surrounding space to tremble violently. Dao Yi's speed was extremely fast. Before the illusory figure could react, his fist landed on her body. Bang! The shadow immediately became illusory. The shadow said in a sinister voice, Dao Yi, do you want to die? Dao Yi's expression was calm. I do want to die. The shadow sneered. If you want to die, what about your sister? Do you want her to die too? Dao Yi's expression instantly became sinister. Back then, you promised me that you would set her free. The shadow said, that was back then. This is now. Dao Yi, if you don't kill him, your sister will be exiled for eternity. Dao Yi roared. You go back on your words. The shadow sneered. Dao Yi, do you think that without you, we wouldn't be able to come here? Even if your master reawakens, so what? Do you really think that he can stop us again? I want you to kill him because I don't want more trouble. Dao Yi clenched her fists tightly. After a moment of silence, she said, let me see my sister. The shadow said, wait. After that, she completely turned illusory. Dao Yi slowly closed her eyes. Dao Yi. Yi Xian's voice suddenly sounded from behind Dao Yi. Dao Yi turned around. Yi Xian and disaster appeared in front of her. They have been here for a while. They heard the conversation between Dao Yi and the shadow just now. Dao Yi's expression became complicated. You really are a different dimensional person. Dao Yi chuckled. When did you guess it? Yi Xian looked at Dao Yi. Not long ago. Dao Yi nodded. I am a different dimensional person. Ah Ming suddenly said, then why did you come to this world back then? Dao Yi softly said, I came to this world by accident, then met Master. Saying so, she shook her head. It was Master's misfortune to meet me. Ah Ming looked at Dao Yi. Did the different dimensional people use your family to force you to betray Master? Dao Yi chuckled. Regardless of the reason, I still betrayed Master. If it wasn't for me, it wouldn't have been so easy for the different dimensional people to kill him. Saying so, her smile became bitter. Master is really stupid. He already knew my identity and origin, but never guarded against me. Ah Ming asked again, what about your main body? Dao Yi said, my main body. Saying so, she shook her head and didn't say anything else. Yi Xian suddenly asked, did they want you to kill me and then break the seal here? Dao Yi nodded. They would need at least a few years to break the seal here, but if I help them, they can immediately break the seal here. Obviously, they can't wait. Ah Ming asked, why can't they wait? Dao Yi hesitated, then shook her head and didn't say anything else. Ah Ming frowned and was about to ask again, but Yi Xian suddenly said, can I see that letter? He knew that the letter was the reason why Dao Yi changed her attitude towards him. The letter that Gaji left for Dao Yi. He was very curious about the contents of the letter. What was it that made Dao Yi change her mind? Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian and said with smile, I will show you later. Yi Xian asked, can't I do it now? Dao Yi nodded. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but at this time, the space behind them suddenly trembled. As Dao Yi turned around, a woman suddenly appeared in front of the three of them. The woman was also wearing a white dress and looked very similar to Dao Yi. Obviously, she was Dao Yi's younger sister. The woman looked at Dao Yi with a calm expression. Dao Yi walked in front of the woman with a complicated expression. Gu, how have you been all these years? The woman was slightly embarrassed. Bowing his head slightly, he did not speak. Dao Yi grabbed Gu's hand and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I didn't take good care of you all these years. I let you. Right at this moment, a strange dagger suddenly appeared in Gu's hand. In the next moment, she directly stabbed the dagger into Dao Yi's stomach. Bang! In an instant, Dao Yi's entire body froze on the spot, and then her body started to dissipate rapidly. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian and Ming's expressions changed greatly. Yi Xian was about to attack, but at this time, Dao Yi suddenly said in a trembling voice, Don't. This is the Time Divine Blade, it contains extremely powerful time energy, you can't resist this kind of energy. Ming also stopped Yi Xian. That weapon caused even her to feel danger. Gu stared fixedly at Dao Yi, and tears flowed down her eyes unceasingly. Why? Why did you betray your clansman for a lowly human? Why? Why? Dao Yi touched Gu's cheek with her left hand and said softly, Because big sister likes this human. Gu roared angrily, he is just a human. A lowly creature, a lowly race. How can you like him? Do you know? You have brought shame to our entire Aga clan. As she spoke, she suddenly stabbed the blade in her right hand. Bang! Dao Yi's body became even more illusory, and she frowned slightly. An instant later, she smiled slightly, silly girl, liking a person is not something you can control. As she spoke, she turned to look at Yi Xian and smiled slightly, I wanted to accompany you for a while longer, but things didn't go as I wished. Promise me, don't look for my main body, and don't save me. Death is really a release for me. Living is really painful. As her voice fell, she looked up at the boundless starry sky and smiled lightly, in this life, I don't owe anyone anymore. As soon as she spoke, her body suddenly turned into countless stars and scattered in all directions. When these stars scattered in all directions, the surrounding seals started to tremble. Strengthen the seals. She was using her life to strengthen the seals here. At this moment, a letter suddenly floated in front of Yi Xian, and there was only one word on the letter, love. Many years ago, under a tree. The girl who was reading suddenly raised her head and asked the man leaning against the tree, Do you love me? The man was slightly startled, and then he used the book to gently pat the girl's little head and said with a smile, I like you, like all of you. The girl lowered her head slightly, and there was a trace of unconcealable disappointment in her eyes. P.S. Thank you for everyone's support. Chapter 1649. He disappeared. In the starry sky, Yi Xian's mind went blank. Dao Yi, who was fine just a moment ago, disappeared just like that. At this moment, Gu suddenly looked at Yi Xian with undisguised hatred in her eyes. Lowly creature. As soon as she finished speaking, she charged at Yi Xian. Ming frowned slightly. He took a step forward and punched. Rumble. Gu was forced back. Ming turned to look at Yi Xian. Let's go. She could already sense many mysterious and powerful auras in the surroundings. They were alien race experts. Yi Xian was about to speak, but Ming took him and disappeared. In the battlefield, Gu looked up at the seals around her. Tears flowed from her eyes. A moment later, her eyes turned cold. You actually died for a lowly human. Damn it. With that, she turned and left. On the other side. By the time Yi Xian and Ming left the black vortex, the plain-dressed woman had already disappeared. Misery looked at the two of them. Where's Dao Yi? Ah Ming said solemnly, she's gone. Not here anymore. Misery frowned. What do you mean? Ah Ming recounted what had happened earlier. After listening, Misery said softly, so, she really is an alien. In fact, she had her suspicions. That was because Dao Yi's attainments in the laws of time were too profound. They were above the laws of time. Ah Ming said solemnly, we don't have much time left. They didn't have much time left. At the side, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Ah Ming looked into the distance. She hesitated for a moment, then followed. Yi Xian arrived at the small island and walked up to the tree. This was the place where God Yi and the nomological laws often stayed. Looking at everything in front of him, Yi Xian felt a little emotional. He looked at Ah Ming beside him. If it wasn't for the alien, you guys would definitely be living a good life, right? Ah Ming nodded. She looked around with a complicated expression. Yi Xian suddenly said, Dao Yi is still alive, right? Ah Ming looked at Yi Xian. You want to save her? Yi Xian said softly, I don't know, she couldn't forget Dao Yi's last words to her. She lived a tiring life. Living was a form of suffering for her. Clansman. Lover. Sister, in fact, her life was really painful. Ah Ming suddenly said, we can't go back to the past anymore. Yi Xian said, we still have more than 4 years. Ah Ming nodded. 4.5 years. Yi Xian said softly, do me a favor. Ah Ming looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said, find someone. Ah Ming nodded. It's fine as long as the other party is in this universe. Yi Xian smiled and said, definitely. After saying so, he turned around and left. At this time, Ah Ming suddenly said, do me a favor first. Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming, and Ah Ming pointed at the tree. My box. Yi Xian looked at the box that Ah Ming was pointing at. Come down. The box slowly descended and landed in front of Ah Ming. Ah Ming opened the box and took out a letter. After looking at it for a long time, she silently put it away. Yi Xian was a bit curious. What is it? Ah Ming said softly, nothing. Go find the person you're looking for. After saying so, she turned around and left. Yi Xian was a bit speechless. Soon, the two of them disappeared from the island. Somewhere in the starry sky, the two of them were traveling through space. Ah Ming said, what do you want to do? Yi Xian said, I don't want to fight anymore. This chapter isn't finished, please continue. Ah Ming looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression was calm. The other dimensional people are so much stronger than me, why should I bear it myself? Ah Ming said, Dao Yi said that you have to rely on yourself. Yi Xian said, Dao Yi is no longer here. Ah Ming didn't say anything else. Lakeside, inside the bamboo house. A powerful aura suddenly spread out from the bamboo house. Soon, a woman walked out. Enlancio. She had also reached Peri-Celestial. On the side, Misfortune glanced at Enlancio. It had to be said that she was a bit shocked. This little girl in front of her was extraordinarily talented. She was even better than them in the past. If she had received guidance earlier, her achievements would have been far greater. At this time, another powerful aura came out from the bamboo house. Misfortune turned around and saw another woman walking out. Little Seven. Swordsman Little Seven. Misfortune glanced at Little Seven. Reincarnated person. Little Seven didn't say anything. Misfortune said, from now on, you need to understand time. Only by understanding time will you be able to fight against the other dimensional people in the future. Enlancio nodded slightly. Miss, please guide us. Misfortune shook her head. The Tao of time is most proficient in Tao Yi. Now that Tao Yi is no longer here, I'll let time law teach you. As soon as she finished speaking, a woman appeared in front of the two women. It was the time law. Time Law glanced at the two women. Let's go. Saying so, she disappeared with the two women. When they reappeared, they were already in the time dimension. Time Law looked at the two women. This is my time dimension. Everyone has their own time dimension. What you need to do now is to understand this time dimension, and then have the ability to sever it. In the following time, the two women began to study the time law. Somewhere in a pavilion. On this day, a woman suddenly walked out of the pavilion. Mu Nian. The moment Mu Nian walked out, the surrounding space became transparent. Broken Deity Realm Peak. Not only that, her current understanding of time had far surpassed the Broken Deity Realm. Mu Nian looked at the strange space in front of her and chuckled. Is this the time dimension? Saying so, she looked up at the horizon and said softly, time. Space. The time dimension is built on top of space. Then, can the two be combined? At this point, her brows suddenly furrowed. Dimension. Could there be multiple dimensions of space and time? In an unknown starry sky, the sound of a sword suddenly resounded. The next moment, a wisp of sword light tore through the starry sky and disappeared at the end of the starry sky. 2. At this moment, 2 had also broken through. Somewhere in an unknown starry sky, Ah Ming suddenly stopped and looked into the distance. We're here. They're here. Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. In that starry sky, he saw a man. A man in a green robe. Beside the man in a green robe, there were several familiar figures. The spear-wielding Missin. The little girl with horns on her head. And that furry white little guy. At this moment, the man in a green robe suddenly stopped and turned around. When he saw Yi Xian, he smiled. You actually found me. Yi Xian walked to the man in a green robe with Ah Ming. He looked around and said, Dad, I'm here to ask for your help. He went straight to the point. He would not fight the alien dimensional people by himself. If he fought them by himself, more people would die. The man in a green robe thought for a moment and said, Exterminate the alien dimensional people? Yi Xian spread his hands. Do as you see fit. The man in a green robe was speechless. This chapter is not finished, please continue to the next page. Yi Xian looked at the little girl with horns on her head and said with a smile, Hello, Arya. Arya glanced at Yi Xian. I heard that you're doing quite badly. Is that true? Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. At this time, the white little guy flew to Yi Xian. She grinned and lightly patted Yi Xian's shoulder with her little claw before returning to Arya's shoulder. This was considered a greeting. Yi Xian looked at Nanjing. Anton. Nanjing nodded slightly. Yi Xian looked at the man in a green robe. After a moment of silence, the man said, Do you always think that I'm fooling around? Yi Xian nodded. I thought so. The man in a green robe laughed. You're quite frank. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Dad, I really can't fight the alien dimensional people. This enemy is a bit abnormally strong. If it was normal, I wouldn't have come looking for you. The man in a green robe walked to Yi Xian, patted Yi Xian's shoulder, and said with a smile, I'll take you to see what is abnormal. After saying that, he turned and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then followed. The group walked toward the depths of the starry sky. On the way, Arya suddenly said, Little Xuanzi, I'll take you to the Milky Way realm to play in the future. Yi Xian looked at Arya. The Milky Way realm? Arya nodded. It'll be fun. Little White nodded vigorously in agreement. Yi Xian was about to speak when an invisible pressure suddenly swept over from the depths of the starry sky. Boom! The surrounding starry sky trembled violently, then collapsed layer by layer. Not only did the starry sky collapse, but also space and time. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. There was actually such an expert in this world? The law of disaster was also in disbelief. How could there be an expert of this level in this world? At this moment, the man in a green robe waved his right hand lightly, and the pressure disappeared. The surrounding starry sky returned to normal. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The old man wore a gray robe, and his hair was so long that it almost reached his waist. His gaze was fixed on Yi Xian, and his gaze was filled with greed. Seeing the old man's gaze, Yi Xian frowned. There's something wrong with that gaze. At this moment, the old man turned to look at Yi Xian. Fellow Taoist, you've crossed the line. Fellow Taoist. Yi Xian glanced at the old man. This form of address is a little strange. The man in a green robe pointed at Yi Xian and smiled. This is my son. The old man's expression was calm. Fellow Taoist, you're blessed to have given birth to a son with a Taoist physique. Taoist physique? Yi Xian frowned. He remembered that Qing had told him about his physique back in Qingcheng. At that time, Qing had said that it was a Taoist physique. But later on, he himself had forgotten about it. Because it didn't seem to be of any use. Physique was inferior to bloodline. The man in a green robe smiled. I'm not an unreasonable person. It hasn't been easy for my son. Can you let him go? After a moment of silence, the old man smiled. If it's just a Taoist physique, then I'll give you face. Unfortunately, he has 4 special Taoist physiques. Even the other dimensional people covet him. So, I can't give you face, fellow Taoist. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. The moment the old man disappeared, Yi Xian's expression changed greatly. He was about to make a move, but Ming's reaction was faster. She directly blocked in front of Yi Xian and punched out. The old man didn't dodge, and also punched out. Boom! Ming directly retreated several tens of thousands of meters away. When she was about to attack again, the old man and Yi Xian had already disappeared. Seeing this, Ming's expression became extremely ugly. As if thinking of something, she turned to look at the man in a green robe. You're not going to attack? The man in a green robe smiled. Let the sword chi fly for a while. Ming. End of this chapter. Chapter 1650. At this moment, Yi Xian was quite stunned. He was traversing through space at a terrifying speed. It was so fast that even his dimensional body was unable to endure it. At this moment, the old man beside him suddenly stopped. The old man turned around, and a strand of sword energy tore through the air. It was a familiar sword energy. A wisp of viciousness flashed through the old man's eyes when he saw the sword energy, and then he took a step forward and tapped forward with his finger. A strange vortex suddenly appeared on the tip of his finger. As soon as the vortex appeared, the space in the surroundings condensed, and it wasn't just space that had condensed, even time had condensed. The sword energy arrived. Bang! The black vortex shattered, and the space in the surroundings was instantly obliterated as well. The old man retreated repeatedly, and he moved over 30 kilometers back. However, the sword energy was still there when the old man stopped moving. The old man was horrified, and he swiftly swept his arms forward. Bang! The old man's figure shook violently, and then he became ethereal. The old man hurriedly looked towards the distance, and his voice trembled, "Fellow Taoist, please show mercy." Meanwhile, a sword howl suddenly resounded from the sword energy. Hiss! The sword energy slashed down from above the old man's head. Bang! The old man's eyes opened wide while his entire body trembled violently. Meanwhile, the green-clothed man's group appeared here. The old man gazed at the green-clothed man with disbelief in his eyes. "You." The green-clothed man smiled, "I gave you a chance." The old man suddenly clenched his right hand, and then it vanished. Ming's face fell when he witnessed this scene. He wants to turn back time. The green-clothed man grinned, "There's no rush. As soon as he finished speaking, he pressed his fingers together and slashed forward. Hiss! A rift that was over 30 kilometers long suddenly appeared in the space here. A shrill and miserable cry resounded from within the rift, and then countless strands of blood seeped out from within it. He's dead. Ah Ming took a deep and long glance at the green-clothed man, and he was beyond shocked. That man had destroyed time with a single strike of his sword. That wasn't the most terrifying part. The most terrifying part was how easily he'd done it. The green-clothed man gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Do you have a lot of questions? Yi Xian nodded. At this moment, he couldn't calm down for a long time. The green-robed man smiled and said, ask away. I will answer whatever I know. However, I can't guarantee that you will understand. Yi Xian asked in a deep voice, what is the Taoist form that he mentioned just now? The azure-robed man said, it's a very special physique. You were born with it. However, it was sealed by the heavenly mandate. Yi Xian was puzzled. Sealed? The blue-clothed man nodded, the smile on his face gradually fading. If I don't seal it, you will be even more miserable. Yi Xian was curious. What do you mean? The azure-robed man said softly, the Tao body is also known as the Great Tao body. I can't explain the nature of this constitution to you. You only need to know one thing about the Tao Yi. That is, the body of the Great Tao contains the origin of the Great Tao, and this origin of the Great Tao no longer exists in this world. Not only in this world, but also in the alternate dimension. Back then, when the alien dimensional people came to this universe, it was not to devour it, but to obtain God Ye's origin of the Great Path. It's the same now. At this time, Ah Ming suddenly said softly, I see. Yi Xian looked at Ah Ming. You know about the origin of the Great Tao? Ah Ming nodded. Master mentioned it back then, but he didn't say much. Yi Xian was curious. What's the use of the origin of the Great Tao? The azure-robed man smiled. There are many uses. The biggest one is that it can be used to break through the limits of one's soul. Yi Xian was curious. Break through the limits of one's own soul? The azure-robed man smiled. The mortal realm is the body, ascension is the soul. Do you know what's above the soul? Yi Xian shook his head. The azure-robed man pointed at his head and smiled. It's the consciousness. Above the soul is the consciousness. The deity realm is the limit of the soul, and above the deity realm is the intent realm. The so-called intent realm refers to the consciousness. Breaking through the limit of the deity realm can allow one's consciousness to exist in the time dimension. Under such circumstances, as long as time does not disappear, one is almost immortal, thus achieving a so-called eternal life. Because even if the body is destroyed and the soul is destroyed, one's consciousness is still there. One can still be considered alive. That old man just now is half-step intent realm. He is just a little bit away from reaching the true intent realm, and what he lacks is the origin of the Great Tao. Yi Xian suddenly looked at Ah Ming. Ah Ming, have you reached the intent realm? Ah Ming shook his head. Yi Xian asked, deity realm? Ah Ming nodded. The azure-robed man said, the laws of this universe are not simple deity realm, because their understanding of time and space far surpasses the people of this world. When the realm is the same, it depends on whose combat power is stronger. And a person's combat power depends on their understanding and use of time and space. The otherworldly people are stronger than this universe because of their use of time. Yi Xian looked at the azure-robed man and asked, Dad, what's your realm? Ah Ming also looked at the azure-robed man, his heart full of curiosity. What realm did these three swords belong to? The azure-robed man smiled. I have no realm. Yi Xian frowned slightly. No realm? The azure-robed man nodded. I cultivate the sword, I don't cultivate realm. Yi Xian blinked. What do you mean? The azure-robed man smiled. You can think of it this way. I'm a swordsman who only cultivates the sword. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, only cultivates the sword? The azure-robed man nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was silent. He understood now. His dad only cultivated the sword. As long as the sword was strong enough, all space and time were fleeting. Therefore, he could not use any realm to measure his dad. Because he did not cultivate realm at all. As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked again, just now, that old man said I have 4 types of Taoist bodies. What does that mean? The azure-robed man said, you have 4 types of Taoist bodies. The first is the Tendo body. This is innate and was given to you by God Yi. After he reincarnated, this Taoist body also reincarnated. The Taoist body does not refer to the physical body, but the soul and consciousness. As long as your soul and consciousness do not dissipate, your Taoist body will always be there. The second type is the swordsmanship Taoist body. This is what I gave you. Yi Xian blinked. You? The azure-robed man nodded. It should be because I'm too invincible. Therefore, my son was born extraordinary, haha. Yi Xian was speechless. Arya glanced at the azure-robed man and pouted. They're all thick-skinned. The azure-robed man continued, the third type is the reincarnation Taoist body. This is what the reincarnation law gave you. Actually, this reincarnation Taoist body is quite interesting. That little girl made it to protect God Yi. It can prevent others from taking over his body and also eliminate all karma of reincarnation. Unfortunately, she met destiny. Otherwise, you might not be you now. This reincarnation Taoist body was suppressed in the beginning. The last one is the destiny Taoist body. Yi Xian was a little curious. The destiny Taoist body? The azure-robed man nodded. This is the most mysterious and the strangest. Even destiny and I can't understand this thing. He paused, then continued, actually, little guy, did you know that even destiny and I can't sense the trajectory of your future? Yi Xian frowned slightly. What do you mean? The azure-robed man said softly, it means that your destiny is very special, even more special than mine and destiny's. This is also what we're worried about. Do you know why we want you to become stronger? Because only with great strength can you truly control your own destiny. The current you can't be considered to be in control of your own destiny. From a certain perspective, your destiny is still affected by God Yi and us. Yi Xian was silent. That's right. Isn't my current destiny affected by God Yi, my father, and Qing, Er? In other words, his destiny was controlled by his father and Qing, Er. Although that was good. However, it was a fact that he could not control his own destiny. The azure-robed man said again, I told you before that I'm looking for someone. In fact, I'm not only looking for the person, but also karma and destiny. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Karma and destiny? The azure-robed man opened his palm and a blade of grass appeared in his hand. The azure-robed man looked at Yi Xian. This blade of grass will wither, right? Yi Xian nodded. The azure-robed man said, this is its destiny. From growing to withering, this was the trajectory of its fate. As for you, we can't sense your destiny. That's what we're worried about. Because this means that your future may not be in our control. In other words, your future destiny will be out of our control. When that happens, things will become very, very troublesome. Yi Xian said softly, I kind of understand. The azure-robed man continued, she and I can still suppress some things, but you make us feel danger. The uncertainty of the future makes her and I a little worried. After all, she and I are not truly omnipotent, especially some things that can't be solved with force. Yi Xian frowned slightly. I make you feel danger? The azure-robed man nodded and his smile gradually disappeared. To be precise, it's your future that makes us feel danger. Do you know what she and I are most worried about? Yi Xian shook his head. The azure-robed man looked at Yi Xian. Who is your biggest karma now? It's me and her. The two of us are your biggest karma. However, we're worried that there's an even stronger karma on you. Yi Xian said solemnly, an even stronger karma, a karma stronger than yours? The azure-robed man nodded. You have the strongest karma and destiny in the world. As for me and her, we can cut off our own karma and control our own destiny. In fact, this sentence isn't right because even she and I can't say that we can completely control our own destiny. Because the future is unknown, and the unknown means that everything is possible. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Karma. The karma law that God Yi created back then. The azure-robed man shook his head and smiled. Your understanding is wrong. Karma is not created by God Yi, including the so-called destiny. He didn't create it. He only has a certain understanding of karma and destiny, then based on his understanding, he established an order in this world. If he really was the creator of destiny and karma, he wouldn't have lost himself. Karma and destiny, they really exist. You can feel them, but you can't find them. Just like how the grass will wither, why will it wither? It's not something that can be explained in a few words. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. It's complicated. The azure-robed man smiled. For you now, karma, destiny, and reincarnation must be very complicated. As he said that, he patted Yi Xian's shoulder. Actually, your father isn't good at these things either. I don't want to care about these things. If you hadn't asked, I wouldn't have bothered to answer this kind of question. It's too boring. I have a sword, and with one sword, who can't be destroyed. Chapter 1651. Who couldn't be destroyed by a single strike of his sword? Yi Xian shook his head and chuckled. His father was just like his older brother and and they were extremely arrogant. Meanwhile, the green-clothed man suddenly chuckled. Come, I'll take you to see the world. As soon as he finished speaking, he led Yi Xian towards the distance. Ah Ming hurriedly followed them as well. The green-clothed man glanced at Ah Ming and didn't speak. Actually, he'd intended to deal with the laws of the universe. But he'd noticed that these little girls weren't bad, so he hadn't done anything. Even though he wasn't a good person, he wouldn't kill indiscriminately. Of course, the precondition was that the laws of the universe didn't target Yi Xian to death. It wasn't that he didn't care, but he wouldn't interfere easily. A young man who suffered a little wasn't a bad person. At the very least, the current Yi Xian was much more mature than before. In the past, Yi Xian was always showy and didn't have any sense of danger. And now, he already had a heart that wanted to become stronger. It didn't take long for their group to arrive at an unknown continent. In the air, Yi Xian looked down. The mountains were connected to each other, and there was no end in sight. Yi Xian was quite curious. Where are we? The green-clothed man smiled. The endless continent, an enemy that's rather mysterious to the world. Yi Xian was quite curious. Mysterious? The green-clothed man nodded. He was about to speak when an old man suddenly appeared here. Ah Ming's expression instantly became solemn when he saw the old man. The old man was actually at the god-destroying realm. Besides the three swords, such an expert actually existed in this universe, and I've never been aware of it. After all, the universe court could be said to have controlled the entire universe in the past. The old man was slightly stunned when he saw the green-clothed man, and then he hurriedly bowed respectfully. So it's sect leader Yang. The green-clothed man smiled. Let's take a stroll. The old man nodded. Please do as you please. As soon as he spoke, he left. The green-clothed man smiled. Let's go. Not long after, the group arrived in front of an ancient and dilapidated city. The city was very dilapidated, and there were broken walls everywhere. With a single glance, one could tell that it had experienced the baptism of time, and it was filled with an ancient aura. The group walked into the city. On the two sides of the streets, there were some people sitting there. There were old people, middle-aged men, and women. In front of these people, there were some small toys. That was not the main point. The main point was that these people were all at the god-slaying realm. Ming's expression became extremely solemn at the sight of this, and she gazed at the green-clothed man. The latter smiled. Only godly Reaper realm experts can come to this continent. Ming said in a deep voice, "Why don't we know?" The man in green smiled and said, "Miss, there are still many things that you don't know." Ming looked around and didn't say anything. At this time, the little white fellow on Arya's shoulder suddenly flew in front of an old man. The old man glanced at the little white fellow, and a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. Ancestor of spirits. The spirit ancestor. The old man's voice was soft, but everyone on the street heard it. At this moment, everyone looked over. Their gazes were filled with greed, curiosity, and seriousness. The little white fellow seemed to be used to all of this, and she paid no attention to them at all. Her gaze descended onto a small black pot. The little fellow pointed at the pot, and then she gazed at the old man. The old man said, "That's a world pot, and there's a world hidden within it." The little white fellow suddenly withdrew a skewer of candied fruits and passed it to the old man. Yi Xian's expression froze. She's here again. She's going to trade candied fruits for treasures again. The green-clothed man shook his head and smiled. He patted the little fellow lightly on the head, and then he gazed at the old man and smiled. 100 strands of primordial violet chi. Deal? The old man glanced at the little white fellow. 200. The green-clothed man smiled, and then he gazed at the little white fellow. Let's go. The little white fellow didn't hesitate at all and immediately flew back to Arya's shoulder. The group of them walked towards the distance. Meanwhile, the old man suddenly said, 150. The green-clothed man didn't even turn around. The old man said again, 100. The green-clothed man stopped in his tracks, and turned to look at the old man. He pointed with his finger, and 100 strands of purple chi landed in front of the old man. The old man also pointed with his finger, and the world pot flew in front of the green-clothed man. The green-clothed man handed the world pot to Yi Xian. "It's for you." Yi Xian blinked his eyes. "For me?" The green-clothed man nodded. "The spiritual energy in the gourd is very abundant. When the time comes, let the little fellow bring some spiritual energy in, and it will become an excellent place for cultivation. You can let the Undying Emperor clan enter, and their cultivation speed will increase by at least several times. Most importantly, if there's any danger, they can immediately move away. Other than that, there should be some historical remains inside, and these historical remains are a blessing for them." Yi Xian didn't refuse, and immediately put it away. Wasn't what his father owned also his? What's there to be polite about? As if thinking of something, Yi Xian asked, "Then why does the old man have such a godly item?" The green-clothed man smiled. "Maybe he killed someone and stole it, or maybe he picked it up, who knows? In any case, it's ours now." Yi Xian nodded. "All right." The group continued forward. Along the way, the people on the street sized them up from time to time, especially the little white fellow. This was the spirit ancestor. With the spirit ancestor around, cultivation would be twice the result with half the effort. Most importantly, the spirit ancestor had the ability to search for treasures. It could be said that it was the real god of fortune. Moreover, the spirit ancestor's purple chi was very helpful to experts of their level. However, those who could be in this place were not idiots. How could a person who dared to strut around the streets with the spirit ancestor be an ordinary person? Although the spirit ancestor was very tempting, no one dared to make a move. At their level, experts were very clear that sometimes, a bad cause could cause countless years of cultivation to be destroyed. Experts of their level were most afraid of karma, especially bad karma. Right then, a woman suddenly smiled and said, "Fellow cultivator, are you interested in looking at this thing in front of me?" The green-clothed man stopped in his tracks and looked at the woman. In front of the woman was a bamboo scroll. The woman smiled and said, this is the manuscript left behind by God Yi back then. It's extremely precious and only needs 300 strands of purple qi. The manuscript left behind by God Yi. Ming's interest was immediately piqued. She was about to take it, but was stopped by a mysterious force. The woman looked at Ming and smiled. Miss, this is against the rules. Ming asked, what manuscript is this? The woman smiled. A manuscript about martial arts cultivation. It's priceless. However, Ming shook her head. The woman looked at Ming. Miss, why are you shaking your head? Ming said calmly, this is fake. Hearing that, the woman narrowed her eyes. Fake? Ming nodded. It's fake. The woman smiled. Miss, are you joking? Ming glanced at the woman. The handwriting on the bamboo scroll isn't his. Yi Xian looked at the bamboo slip. There were 2 words that looked very faint on the bamboo slip, martial arts. Obviously, Ming had seen these 2 words. Right then, Ming suddenly said, let's go. The group was about to leave when the woman suddenly smiled. Everyone, please wait. The woman looked at Ming and smiled. Miss, you said that this is fake. Do you have proof? If you don't, you'll have to buy it for 10 times the price. Although she was smiling, it was very cold. Ming stared at the woman. Force me to buy it? The woman smiled. What makes you say that it's fake? Ming asked, what if it's fake? The woman smiled. I'll pay you back 10 times the price. Ming nodded. You said it. The woman nodded. I said it. Ming said, since you know about God Yi, do you know about the laws of the universe? Hearing that, the woman narrowed her eyes. Ming smiled. Obviously, you've already guessed my identity. The laws of the universe. As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes fell on Ming. They were naturally no stranger to the laws of the universe. When God Yi was around, he was truly invincible in the world. The laws of the universe under him were also extremely powerful. Ming looked at the woman. Do you need me to prove my identity? The woman smiled. So it's the laws of the universe, but I don't understand. How dare you come here? And you came alone. Ming stared at the woman and was about to speak when Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss, are we not human? Arya suddenly said, I'm not human. Yi Xian was speechless. Little White quickly pointed at herself, indicating that she was not human either. Yi Xian was speechless. The woman glanced at Yi Xian and smiled. You're so weak. How did you get in? Did you get in through connections? Yi Xian nodded. I did get in through connections. The woman was speechless. At that moment, Ming suddenly said, what about 10 times the compensation? The woman glanced at Ming and smiled. The laws of the universe. Don't you know that the owner of this place dislikes the cosmic court the most? Ming was expressionless. Do I need others to like me? As she said that, she walked in front of the woman. Swindling people in the name of the owner, have you asked us? The woman smiled. Why? Are you going to enforce the law? Ming stared at the woman. What about 10 times the compensation? Are you a sore loser? The woman blinked. I'm not going to compensate. Hit me then. Ming smiled. Are you trying to provoke me? The woman smiled brightly. I'm trying to provoke you. Hit me if you can. Do you dare to fight here? Do you? Ming suddenly slapped him across the face. Slap. Before the woman could even react, she was sent flying dozens of feet away by the slap, a resounding slap. Everyone was dumbfounded. She really dared to fight here? After Ming slapped the woman away, she pulled Yi Xian and walked behind the green-robed man. She was very obedient, as if she wasn't the one who attacked. The green-robed man didn't say anything. Yi Xian held Ah Ming's hand and smiled. Don't be afraid. Let my father handle it. He can handle it. The green-robed man was speechless. At that moment, an extremely powerful aura suddenly swept over from the sky. P.S. I've been having a toothache recently. I want to live off a woman. Fellow Taoists, can you introduce me? I'm fine with anything. Everyone, don't bother with how to address the woman. Qing. Only Yi Xian could call her Qing. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.